Really good to see you. Good morning. We're going to get started here with Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. For those of you that aren't aware of the building, again, we have a muster station just over to the right outside the door here in case of an emergency. We also have washroom facilities to go down the hall in the hallway back behind me. And yeah, we'll get started. First and foremost, I guess it's important that we acknowledge the traditional territories of the Comox and Pentlash peoples in which we do our business in. And guess we get started on the agenda. So item number one.
Move on.
Thank you. So I'll invite the City of Courtenay to come up.
Good morning. I'll stand back a little bit. Thank you. Through the chair to the members of the committee. First, obviously, before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the land in which we gather, being the unceded territories, the Comox First Nations. So appreciate this opportunity. A quick intro. My name is Kyle Shaw. I'm the Director of Public Works Services with the City of Courtenay. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak with you today regarding this exciting cross-jurisdictional active transportation project. The purpose of my presentation today is to introduce the Lake Trail Road Active Transportation Infrastructure Improvement Project and to request that the committee consider their capacity to support funding towards the delivery of this important project. The City of Courtenay and the CBRD have a shared vision relative to active transportation. That vision is to improve connectivity between municipal and rural areas and to create opportunities that will ensure residents are able to use active transportation on their daily trips, both to work, to school, to shop, and to recreation. Other key goals of both the cycling network plan for the city and the CBRD's active transportation network plan are to ensure that safe and accessible transportation options are available and accessible for all residents, regardless of age, ability, or income, and to improve safety and reduce greenhouse gas emissions throughout the region. First, I'd like to take a bit of time here just to talk briefly about the history of the Art and School property and how it came to be included in the City of Courtenay's jurisdiction, but also how the Lake Trail Active Transportation Project came to be an important part of the city's cycling network plan. I'll take us back to 1995. A boundary expansion was completed in response to a need for the Art and School to connect to the city's sanitary system. At that time, the school was serviced by an aging septic system. And it was recommended by the health authority that the school district seek alternate connection means of servicing. The city's collection system was a reasonable choice. However, in order to facilitate a connection, a boundary expansion was required at the time. This boundary expansion included a small section of the Ministry of Transportation's road network as to complete the panhandle style connection from the city's Arden Road boundary to the school property. There's some adjoining properties that entered the city adjacent to that area, but that was approximately done in 2003. So since that time, the city has received several requests from different school groups advocating for infrastructure improvements within the corridor, more specifically related to active transportation with a strong focus on safe active routes to school. In 2021, the city partnered with Urban Systems to design an active transportation facility that met the BCAT grant requirements and apply for supportive grant funding through the 2022 program. Unfortunately, the application was not successful and did not receive supportive funding at that time. In July 2023, the CBRD also partnered with Urban Systems. Dan Casey's a great gentleman, has done a lot of work in the Comox Valley. To undertake the implementation strategy exercise to further prioritize the projects identified in the Active Transportation Network Plan, or ATNP as the CBRD calls it. This update saw 4 key projects being identified, with the Lake Trail connection, or Project Q, in those plans ranked as being a medium priority project with focus on regional collaboration and regional connectivity. Being that the CBRD's active transportation network plan and implementation strategy also focuses on a commitment to prioritizing safe active transportation, specifically to and from schools, and the city's CNP echoes that commitment, the Lake Trail project was identified by city staff and the CBRD as a terrific candidate for regional partnership. The Lake Trail design itself is twofold, in that the design includes both on and off-street active transportation infrastructure. The on-street infrastructure, as you see illustrated here in green, would see the construction of a 1.5 meter wide painted buffered bike lane. These bike lanes would see the continuation of an existing bike lane that is already constructed on Lake Trail Road, but extended from Arden Road to the Arden Elementary School, or Webb Road, as you see depicted here. The off-street infrastructure that's illustrated, circled here in red, is a 1 kilometer long, 2 meter wide permeable surface trail. The trail is to be constructed on the north side of the road, extending from the Lake Trail Community School property all the way to the Arden Elementary School property, or the safe crossing that's located there at Webb Road. Additionally, a small section of trail will be constructed on the south side of the road between Webden and Arden. This small section of trail is aimed to provide safe passage to the marked crosswalk that is already located on Lake Trail Road at Arden. The committee members may note that this crosswalk is already in place, and it's equipped with an RRFB, or a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, for enhanced awareness of this crossing. Now, staff recognize that SD 71 school catchments are not limited to city or regional boundaries, and in fact, in many places they span across multiple jurisdictions. And in this case of the Arden catchment, the servicing population is split between Electoral Area C and the city of Courtenay. Now, by using Stats Canada data and our collective GIS systems, staff were able to approximately determine the Arden school catchment servicing population for both the electoral area and the city. This information was then used to quantify the proportional funding request that we have before us here today, with 60% of the residents residing within the city of Courtenay and the remaining 40% within the CBRD. The City of Courtenay again will be submitting a grant application in 2023 for the Active Transportation Project through the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Fund, with a total project cost estimated at nearly $1 million, combined with a maximum funding award through this grant program being approximately $500,000. And based on the benefiting areas and the residents, the city is requesting that the committee consider their capacity to support 40% of the remaining project costs, which is estimated at approximately $186,000. Those are 2023 dollars. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that the committee may have.
Director Green.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, I guess, on this one. So where would we be, what function would we be pulling the money out of?
Through the chair, in response, the staff actually have a report on the agenda that speaks to the Active Transportation Network Plan and the Royston project. And in that staff report, we do make reference to this Lake Trail project.
Yes.
Robin Holm could speak more specifically to what's in that staff report. And in short, though, the funding that we've identified, if the committee is interested, would be a Community Works Fund commitment, given the limitations on other services that we have, and that opportunity that does exist with Community Works funds.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
So vote on receipt of the delegation. Carried. All in favor? Carried. Thanks. All right.
Mr. Chair, I'll just add for the benefit of the delegation. with delegations when they're presented to committee and board, no decisions are typically made at the committee and board meetings themselves. The information is presented, directors are able to ask any questions they might have. And then at a subsequent meeting, staff will work with the committee and with the chair to bring forward that matter for a decision if needed, if there is something that would be coming from that. And as I did mention earlier, the staff report coming up on the agenda does include reference to the Lake Trail project.
All right, Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure. Someone want to make a motion to receive the delegation? Thank you. Calvin?
Zooming in.
Calvin, you're zooming in?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks everyone for having me this morning. Glad to be here. My understanding, I'm just going to provide a bit of an update on our spring meeting. It's just a quick chat about our 2023 program. And then we've got, I think, some time for questions following that. So happy to go through all of those with yourselves today. So if that's all right, I'll just kind of run through our update on our program.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. So we had a few things on the list that we discussed in the spring this year. Probably one of the largest on our side was the asphalt resurfacing program. So this was work on Highway 19A between or just north of the Courtenay city boundaries. So we completed surface improvements, culvert replacements along around 12 kilometers of the road north of Courtenay. Also, as part of that was resurfacing works on Strathcona Parkway up at the top of the hill, basically around the Nordic Drive and the hill parking lot areas. So we got about another 3 kilometers done there. So those projects are now complete, wrapped up in the summer. Next on our list, we had a bridge joint replacement project. This was Highway 19 Sable River Bridge south of the Buffalo Bay interchange. So we completed a replacement of the south bridge deck joint system. And that work was completed as well the spring this year. So we're all done there. Buckley Bay rest area electric vehicle charging station improvements. That was also on our agenda. That was completed December this year. And then outstanding, we still have guide sign replacement projects. So this will be focusing on various highways and side roads to be completed over the fall winter season. So we expect to see a few more of those. I believe we'll be focusing north of the Courtenay area on replacing some of our key guide signs. Also, Highway 19, our wildlife exclusion system. This is the fencing system running along the corridor. We've been doing some repairs and brushing as additional works over the past few seasons. We're going to be doing some additional work over the fall and winter season this year as well. That just kind of keeps those systems functioning and cleared for access and inspection. So there'll be some additional work coming up. So that wraps up the update on our 2023 program. Hopefully by the next meeting, I'd like to have some additional information to share on our upcoming resurfacing program for next year. I don't have anything to share at this time. So look forward to meeting again and providing some further detail on that at the next meeting.
Grieve.
Well, I don't know if I thanked you before. I think I have it. I'll thank you again for the great work on Farnham Road. the never-ending maintenance of Farnham Road. The bringing in the proper asphalt and fixing those critical areas has been huge. I still have people. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a priority on our end. Yeah, thanks very much. Always appreciate the kudos.
And of course, the southern part of 19A as well, which is fantastic. I mean, whatever you did there is probably going to stay put for quite a long time. I think you did 2 layers, didn't you? Because I know 2 layers of asphalt around the Merville store.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of bulletproof. It's awesome. So a big thank you to you guys and from Area C anyway. We're happy up there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Kellen. It's Richard Hardy here from Mary B. I know we've sent you, I think, 2 different letters this year requesting for more FaceTime with yourself in regards to discussing various issues that we're hearing from constituents in Area B. So a lot of roads that need to have holes repaired. Dust on, I'm trying to remember the name of the road, Wireless Road. It's a huge issue out there. Then I'm getting a number of phone calls, and so is Jane's, in regards to what's going on Wireless Road with regards to dust and people actually driving off the side of the road there. And as you know, that's a pretty steep cliff there. Another big item that's I've heard a lot of concerns about is Hawkins Road. And again, when we look at the Goose Spit or the D&D property down there, there are folks that use that barracks because of the one barracks that had that emergency incident a couple of years back where the barracks building was blown up because of a gas line. Long story short, I do understand, and that I've been asked by different folks down at the Spit, what Modi can do in regards to ensuring that that road is iced on a regular basis, and snow plowing, and of course a couple of concrete barriers at the bottom of the Hawkins Hill there as it's going out towards the Spit. Again, my understanding is D&D property or access to D&D properties is an essential service. And I know there are a few times with snow there last winter that folks couldn't get up or down that hill to get out to the base there. So I just ask again for Modi to maybe put that a little bit more clearly on their radar with regards to road maintenance and plowing and sanding and salting.
Okay.
And like I said, I think we've sent 2 letters out to yourself, Mr. Pearson, and we haven't had a response back. Again, there's a lot of roads, a lot of constituents that are putting forward concerns and issues about the roads not being maintained, and hoping that you'll step up to the plate. Finally, I think in our letters, what we've asked for is we get and understand Main Road is busy and Modi's busy. But I think a lot of the constituents have also asked if the project or road maintenance can't be done this year, perhaps, you know, there's some light at the end of the tunnel with regards to some type of a schedule from Main Road Modi saying, yeah, maybe we don't get to these roads this year, but maybe we'll get to them next year. So those are just some of the comments from Area B. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Richard. Maybe just to speak quickly to the overall road maintenance. We definitely appreciate, I'm sure the regional district is definitely hearing a lot from constituents about side road maintenance and improvement. We certainly hear, that quite as well, quite a lot. So just very briefly, obviously, we sort of maintain our own internal management priority system for our side roads, appreciating, we're not going to be able to rehab them all at once. We have to prioritize. So our goal, of course, is safety and reliability. If any maintenance needs to be done to keep roads safe, that's our top priority. And then we're developing priority list for improvement based on our own internal monitoring and condition assessment, and then also taking into account feedback, say from our maintenance contractor, who are aware of where maintenance dollars are going and where improvements could be most beneficial. As well as, like you say, from the public and from yourselves, as the regional districts have a good sense of where current and future development is coming up on. So we value your contributions to that plan as well. And then we're always looking for opportunities to get additional work done, whether that be through our maintenance budget where we can, or synergies with projects, be they resurfacing or various improvement projects. So please continue to keep in touch with us on priority side roads. It's good to know what you guys are hearing about. We'll take all of that feedback and roll it up together in our assessment. And then we just continue to advocate for further improvement.
Great, thanks, Kellen. So before I pass the mic over to Director Harbour, I just again wanted to make sure that the CVRD had whatever priority or planning that Modi and Main Road had. If there's something that can be forwarded to us that we can communicate out to our constituents saying, here's what the priorities are. And ideally down the road, your priority, your road not being looked at or touched for over 30 years, that hopefully it becomes a priority next year or the following year. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks. And it's definitely, good for the public to reach out to us, at any time directly as well. We're always happy to have those conversations and maybe give people a little bit of insight into our process as well. Yeah. So
Thanks,
thank you for that. And and to follow up on the Hawkins Road, we can certainly, this is pretty timely. We're discussing winter maintenance, in the future, coming up with our maintenance contractor as well. So we can certainly pass that along and keep that on our radar as well for monitoring throughout the winter season.
Yeah, I'd hate to see somebody going down Hawkins Road towards the spit, with 2 inches of ice on that road, and there's not that bottom of the hill that's preventing you from going into the water there. So get that looked after. That'd be a big one.
That would
Thanks.
not be a good time. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Director Robert?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for attending today. I just have, well, I don't know if you're welcome to stay on later, Kellen. We'll be discussing the Royston School project in and around the vicinity of there. And I'm thankful for the Ministry of Transportation being a partner in that project. But as we gear up that project, thought I'd follow up. In the last few months, you probably saw 1 or 2 emails around trying to resolve a long-standing issue on Highway 19A coming into Royston. And I know that's something I'd heard when I started my term, which is that the Trent River, to have better indication of the speed limit, there is the sign for dropping down to 60 kilometers an hour. But I think what we're seeing, and I don't know if that's your experience, but what we're seeing is things like the flashing sign that's in Cumberland really impacts people's speed. You see people really slow down when they see their own speed and the flashing sign. So I'm wondering if there would be appetite to consider that for heading north along the Trent River for Royston. I get multiple reports of people continuing to go 80 clicks an hour going through town. And as we embark on that new project around the school, I think it's a good time to make some of those changes. I've been thinking long and hard the last week around how these things get funded. I don't know if that's difficult for you to put that in your budget or anything like that. We could look on our side to see if that's something that we can find a way to find the capital to pay for something like that. But any thoughts you have on that matter would be appreciated today, because I'd be happy to work with you on that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Just to confirm, this is the speed reader board we're discussing?
Yes, yeah. And yeah, exactly. And I think in Area A, that's really the key spot where it's, you're really entering an urban zone. We saw Courtney 3 or 4 years ago drop their speed limit because it used to be 80 clicks all the way to Walmart from Royston, and then they dropped the speed limit to 60 clicks to their boundary, which is quite near Royston. So
right.
I think to have a flashing sign at the Trent River would ensure that that speed is constant at 60 clicks, and people would know about it for sure.
Okay. No, thank you very much for bringing that forward. And we'd be happy to work with you guys further on that. Just a quick, obviously any traffic control device installation on our roads does need to have, the engineering review, just to make sure we're putting in, an appropriate measure that's, warranted and meets all of our standards, that sort of thing. But we'd definitely be happy to review that through our engineering group on our end and work with you guys to do whatever we can to make some improvement there. So maybe we could just touch base when you've got some time and confirm a sort of a location and idea you guys have in mind, and we could take it from there.
Yeah, that's great. I want to say this is a sidebar to the appreciation for the main project, which will be around Royston School, which I know there's already ongoing conversation and will be discussed today, but I'd be happy to pursue that, to have that more comprehensive look at all of Royston. Thank you.
Yeah, Kellen, it's Richard again. Thanks, Director Arbor, for bringing up the point about those warning lights before a signal light. And I know on the Dyke Road, fronting the Comox First Nation, I know there's a number of times where cars are just totally missing the red light and going through that intersection. I think there was a recent accident there about a week and a half ago that had had a lady end up going into the hospital. So if you're reviewing and have those conversations with your engineering department, we'd appreciate something there on the Dyke Road by the Comox First Nation traffic light. I did have one more item, and we've received a number of different phone calls and emails, etc. And that again is revolved around the traffic and speed of traffic on the back road. Lots of folks are voicing concerns right now about trying to come up with some solutions with regards to speed control. And we just bring it to your attention as well. Like I know even some of the elders from the Comox First Nation, having conversations with them, they're just shaking their heads saying, man, the traffic is just whipping through here. So just wondering if there's something that we can do on your end as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Yeah, and again, glad to add that to our list for review to see if there's any improvements we can make on our end. Of course, I mean, I'm sure we've mentioned before, you know, it's definitely, we find through working with our CMP enforcement is our most effective speed control, but we're always happy to look for any opportunities for improvement that we can make as well. So you can certainly add that to our list for review.
Better agree. Shift.
It's not showing up.
We're trying to get Director Green to ask a question here, so.
It's a conspiracy.
Well, if not,
Showing up. It doesn't show up on the.
The fellows in the 917 have to speak.
can you use the other mic? Maybe try the other.
We'll switch.
Hello.
We'll switch it to.
Hello, Trace. There we go.
Director Green.
I think Mr. Glitch has come to visit the building today. Seeing as everybody's heaping on something for your little list there, I think we talked about this before. We had a meeting at the Merville store around Sackville, Merville, 19A, and I know that the same on Macaulay Road. So with the speed reader signs, is there a lineup we can get into to put those in? Because I know they're quite effective when they're up, and I guess, you know, people have short memories, and then 2 weeks later they're back to their old ways. But I would like to add myself to your little list there. I think you're familiar with the Macaulay Road Association, how they tried to get their own speed reader sign, but it ran into regulatory issues. But and the Merville Hall, Merville store area there, which I understand is probably the second highest crash site after Ham Road, 19A, because it is people whistle through there. If it's 80 clicks, they're doing 90, right? So, and it's odd because a lot of the 60 mile an hour like slow signs that have traditionally been up in the Black Creek area, and say even on Coleman Base Road in there. I mean, they go back decades, I guess, so they're just sort of grandfathered in. So I know that there is a process by which the ministry has a department that looks into these areas. But I would like to add my name, if possible, on the list to get a speed reader sign, at least for some time in those areas, during the summer months or something like that. So just to show everybody how fast they are going, because I know that City of Courtney, Kyle's still here, but I know that they put a sign up by the cemetery on Mission Hill, and it was very effective, you know, until I took it down. But you know, if we can get some of that action in some of the key areas around the valley in the electoral areas, even just for a period of time of a week or two or something like that. So I'd like to find out if there is a list, and if we can get on that list. Thank you.
Not a problem. Yeah, thank you, Edwin. Yeah, we'll certainly add you to the list there. Like I said, it's, again, it's got to go through the proper review on our end, and, just to ensure we're doing the right things here. But yeah, certainly recognizing that speed is an issue, all over. So we're definitely doing our part, and we can certainly look into other initiatives as well. We do work with ICBC also to see where we can implement different sort of education campaigns and things on our roadways to help on our end with the speeding issue. And then I think, as we've mentioned in the past, we're also focusing our planning efforts on Highway 19A between Courtney and Campbell River. So looking for future project development there in terms of various improvements that focus on safety, among other things. So we'll happily keep you guys in the loop on that as well.
Thanks, Kellen. So we just have two other quick items, and if you wouldn't mind sticking around to listen in on the active transportation network plan for Royston Road, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks. So vote on receipt. The delegation from Modi. Yeah. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Next item is resolution status report.
Move it.
Thank you. All in favor? Any questions? Edwin?
Oh, it worked. Thank you. Yeah, my question is around, seeing as that we have Kellen here, 15 and 16 on that report, which is to do with the Saratoga Water Management Plan. I believe it's been in, I know this is a little bit above your pay grade. It's probably going right to the ministry, but I'm just wondering if staff have any updates on that, because it has been, what, about 3 or 4 years now. We haven't heard back, and it's very crucial that when it comes to rainwater management, that we work closely with the ministry, being that they're the ones that control the ditches and the water flows. And I know we spent quite a lot of money on engineering reports. So I'm just wondering where that sits in the ministry right now. Have we heard anything back?
Thanks, Director. And actually, I'll maybe let Kellen off the hook a little bit, but I'll ask Mark Rutten if you've got an update on the drainage master planning in the Saratoga area.
Yeah, thank you. Through the CAO, through the chair. I don't really have an update. We did bring a report to the committee that to share the findings of the report and the work that we've done. As indicated in that report, the report does recommend that that we share some of Modi's infrastructure for the purpose of drainage, in addition to road drainage. Yeah, and we have really not progressed that too much further with the Ministry of Transportation. So we likely owe you a bit of an update, or staff report type update with some planned next steps for that work. Yeah, so I'll make a note to bring that forward in the next couple of months so that we can have a better discussion.
Agree.
Yeah, so I just wonder, I mean, files like that can languish in Victoria for decades. So, and it is very critical in light of the fact that we're also talking about item number 3, which is the Saratoga 400 development. And of course, surface water is a really big part of that. So I don't know, I mean, is it something where we can lobby it at our MLA level on this? Because I do think it deserves some attention. And as I say before, I mean, as electoral area reps, we are so tied with provincial ministries to move any initiatives forward. So I don't know how we light a fire. Well, that's another issue. But yeah, I do think that this needs to be addressed. And I don't know how to get the wheel to turn a little bit, but as you say, I mean, we've got areas up there where there is very, very little slope and very little proper place for the rainwater to go. And I know we spent a lot of money on that report. And there's a lot of suggestions in there. So rather than just shelve it and and throw away the taxpayers' money on this thing. If we can just get it to at least acknowledgement and have a cursory look at what we're looking at there. Thanks.
I would just add that, as Mark said, a report to the committee just to bring us back up to speed on where that report was and what some of the findings were and how they might apply to individual applications, development applications, or more broadly to the whole community. I think that would be a first step to come back. And then if there is an advocacy role, we'd identify that as well for the committee.
Not seeing any more questions. Do we want to vote on receipt of the status report? All in favor? Carry.
Move one.
Thank you. So we're just voting on receipt then, or is anybody?
Just
Can we vote on it?
both of these minutes.
Director Reed.
Thank you. Again, through our chair, through staff, through CAO, I'm concerned about the Agriculture Advisory Planning Commission report. The minutes regarding the Farnham Road campground issue that was referred to us through the ALR. I'm curious as to what next steps are with that, because we waited quite a while to have any input into that. And it's a very big concern with Wynn Road up there in Farnham and the fact that all this construction has gone on. And there's concerns around the fact that construction fill has been brought to the site. I'm just wondering what happens now with this report.
And Mr. Chair, you're speaking about the report that was at the AAPC meeting. My understanding is there is an application in process, but Alana Mullally can speak more specifically to the application and when and how that would come forward.
Yeah, it's taken quite a while for us to even have a kick at the can here. Thanks.
Through the chair to the directors. Part of the issue was around the timing of the application. So now that application has gone in, it's been referred to our Ag APC. This recommendation is to send that application forward to the Agricultural Land Commission, who will ultimately decide what happens with that placement of fill, whether it will be allowed, whether additional testing will be required, or whether it will need to be removed. So we are in a bit of a wait and see, not being the approval authority on this one, but we are in the process. We're going through the steps.
Any wild guess on an ETA?
Through the chair to the directors. No, I'm sorry, I don't.
All right. Not seeing any more questions. We'll vote on receipt of the minutes for the Area A Advisory Planning Commission minutes dated September 11th. The Agriculture Advisory Planning Commission minutes dated September the 14th, and the Area C Advisory Planning Commission minutes dated September 21st. All in favor? Carried. All right, moving on to item number 2, the Active Transportation Network Plan, Royston Road implementation and Lake Trail Road update.
Why not?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Robin Holm, Manager of Long Range Planning and Sustainability, will be introducing this along with Dylan Thiessen. And so, Dylan, over to you.
Sorry, just waiting for the PowerPoint to load here. Perfect. Thank you so much. Good morning. Through the acting CAO to the chair and directors. The Active Transportation Network Plan's implementation strategy was approved in July of this year, identifying 2 high priority projects: the Royston Road pedestrian improvements, which will be discussed here today in relation to grant application support, and the Cumberland Courtney connector. 2 medium priority projects were also identified in the strategy, located along Lake Trail Road and Adians Way. In order to undertake the Royston Road pedestrian improvements, staff are in the process of completing a provincial grant application that would cover 70% of the project's eligible costs. Through this process, staff have also met with Comox Valley Schools, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, Comox Valley Cycling Coalition, and the Royston Elementary School Parent Advisory Committee to share the preliminary design and ensure that the design addresses the community's concerns. The recommendation will be discussed more fully in just a moment, but staff are recommending that the CVRD's share of the project costs be allocated from the Electoral Area Parks and Greenways Service, noting that project construction is contingent upon receiving the grant. The total length of the route is approximately 375 meters, going from the Royston Road Highway 19A intersection down Livingston Road to the school. Being a regional district, the road rights of way are within MODI's jurisdiction, so the design is ultimately up to their approval as well. And talking a little bit about the design for just a moment, many of the curbs at the crosswalks across the Royston Road 19A intersection are broken, offering little protection or space from traffic for people who are waiting to cross. The proposed design will rebuild these curbs, offering more space for buffering and protection. The project will also see a 2.5 meter pathway constructed to offer students and community members a much safer place to walk than the existing shoulder along Royston Road, which currently offers no physical barrier and very little separation from traffic that, as we've heard, is often traveling much faster than posted speed limits. The preliminary design also relies on these curbs called Sanderson curbs with reflector posts to provide some physical separation from traffic that would be strategically placed along the entire length of the route. Moving up Royston Road, the separated path will continue along the same side of the road as it goes down Livingston. The design includes a new crosswalk to be painted that crosses Livingston Road and the installation of pedestrian-controlled amber lights at the existing crosswalk across Royston Road. Lastly, a new crosswalk from the path to the school will be painted, also featuring these pedestrian-controlled lights. There's currently access through the fence that goes around this field at school, and the school district expressed willingness to provide sheltered bike parking and a path connecting the crosswalk to the school more directly. Staff are recommending that up to $300,000 be allocated to the project from the Electoral Area Parks and Greenways Service Capital Projects Reserve, which would be done through the 2024 to 28 financial planning process. The administrators of the grant also required that the board confirm that the project is a regional district priority, is shovel ready, and is intended to be completed by March of 2025. Staff also recognize that there will be some further design work required after the submission of the grant as we move towards finalized construction drawings, and we will continue to work with stakeholders on this and incorporate their feedback as we're able to. Preliminarily, staff have heard from Royston Elementary PAC that an additional crosswalk at Highland Road and Royston Road would be helpful, and the Cycling Coalition strongly encouraged us to find an additional 0.5 meter width for the path to make it wider for cyclists. As mentioned earlier, we are constrained in that the right-of-way is in MODI's jurisdiction, but we're certainly willing to explore possibilities to widen the path as much as we are able to. Staff's report also speaks to some options for a Lake Trail Road multi-use path, or MUP. The Active Transportation Network Plan implementation strategy identifies the Lake Trail Road MUP from Arden Elementary to Marsden Road as a medium priority project. Currently, staff are pursuing the Cumberland to Courtenay connector as the next priority project, and this work is already underway with the scoping of an options assessment. And consultation with member municipalities is tentatively scheduled for later this year. Staff's preferred approach to the Lake Trail MUP would be to work on a joint or coordinated project with the city to ensure consistency and connectivity with both designs, where the two local governments would fund the projects that are within their own jurisdiction. If EASC directors, however, are inclined to support the City of Courtenay's funding request at this time, CVRD Electoral Area Community Works funds could be allocated in the upcoming 2024 to 28 financial plan for a direct contribution to the city's project. As James had mentioned, both Robin and myself are here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Any questions? Kellen, I think you're still on the line. Is there any comments that you want to make towards the project?
Hi, everyone. Not too much to comment. I'll just say I believe our teams have now done a preliminary meeting, and we've got a design or an early design to review provide some comment on. So looking forward to providing that information back. And yeah, I think we'll be able to provide some useful feedback and continue to work through and support this as it goes through.
Thank you. So I guess we're looking for all in favor of receipt. Oh, sorry, we got Director Grieve with a question.
Thanks very much. So just a question through to the CAO. Being that we had that presentation under new business, or we had presentations today from the City of Courtenay, would it be appropriate to bring something up under new business of this meeting, or just even, you know, to move it forward, just insofar as the using our community works funds?
I think because the staff report speaks to that opportunity, if you were to use community works funds and
It does.
identify that in the 2024 financial plan as something of interest, I think now would be the place. I would recommend that you consider those recommendations in the staff report around the Royston project first, and then if the committee wants to consider something with respect to that Lake Trail project, that you do so after dispensing with this recommendation.
That's fine. So a second recommendation, or do you want to bring it up as a standalone under new business?
Separate recommendation under the staff report would be
Under
fine.
the staff report. Okay, good. Thank you.
So all in favor of receipt of the report? Carried. Move to recommendation number 1.
Number 1.
All in favor? So it's carried, all in favor. Director Grieve, you want to
Yeah,
make
I
a
would like
recommendation?
to propose a motion as well to have staff bring a report regarding working with the City of Courtenay on the Arden Road project, and look into allocating the electoral area community work funds to help as what would you say, it would be a partnership with the city. However you want to phrase that.
I just ask a clarifying question then. Is this in line with the preference that staff noted around a partnership of the entirety of the Lake Trail path from, I guess it's from Edgett all the way to Morrison Avenue?
They mentioned 40% of the project, right?
So Courtney's delegation and Courtney's presentation was around the Edgett to Arden Elementary School portion.
Yeah.
And then the CVRD Interactive Transportation Network Plan has an additional portion of that trail from Arden Elementary to Marsden.
So we would be helping fund the initial City of Courtenay piece as well.
That's the request from Courtney currently for the $186,000. And then as Dylan noted in the presentation, staff have suggested that a more collaborative approach of the entirety of that trail section would be our preference to promote connectivity and design compatibility. But of course, that wouldn't then meet the City of Courtenay's request around timing for the grant
As well. It would meet
It would
City of
not.
Courtenay's. It would
I
not.
don't believe it would, because you'd have
No.
the collaborative approach would be the entirety of the trail section. Courtney's requesting support and funding
Just
for
the
just
little
the
piece.
City of Courtenay portion.
So would it be fair to ask staff to bring forward a report on how we can add to the City of Courtenay's request? Because the 27th of October is the date of the submissions for the grant, right?
Application. I believe so, yeah.
So at least we can put that piece in there.
Well, yeah, actually, Alana's coming to the table here. Might be able
Alana's
to help
got
us
it.
with this a little bit. Yeah.
Through Mr. Chair and the CAO to the directors. I think, oh, great, there, Robin's got the whole project. So what Dylan and Robin have been working on and identified for you as medium priority in the implementation exercise shows the electoral area portion. City staff, Mr. Shaw was speaking to the portion within the city's boundaries and asking you to provide community works funds to the city portion. amounting to 40% of the total project cost, sorry. And what Robin and Dylan have suggested is that, in fact, instead of doing that, that we receive direction from you to work with city staff to do both pieces. I'll certainly hand it over to Robin and Dylan, but the work to date that we've done on design does not include this project because it was identified as a medium-term priority. Robin?
Through the chair to Director Grieve, we were directed to work on the Royston Road project, which is why we have been able to get this grant application ready. We were planning to work on the Cumberland Courtney connector next, as mentioned in Dylan's presentation. That's already in progress. If we were to be directed to work on the Lake Trail project, we could move that up in terms of the priorities and work on a joint application with the City of Courtney for a 2024 intake. We have not done the work at this time to have that. It would have to be a later project. But right now, the city is asking for a funding request for the red section. And so it'd be a funding contribution. But if we were to work together, we would work on the green section of the trail and the City of Courtney would work on the red section, each funding their own path within the jurisdiction.
Okay, so yeah, understood. But as you say, it's not on the top priority list right now. So this would be something we can put down. So I don't know what the committee feels on this, but I would think that if we would work with the city on the bigger portion, but that wouldn't impede them from making their application because all their ducks are in a row right now anyway, right? Okay, so I guess we need, and further that staff be directed to work with the City of Courtney to address the entire trail. Would that be appropriate then?
Yes, and it would have to be for a 2024 grant.
The 2024, yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Okay.
Dave, if I could just add one thing before Director Arbor, I think what that could impede is the City of Courtney's grant application in 2023 if they are depending on the 40% funding from the CBRD or the City of Courtney portion.
So at this point in time, that would be our best option, just to piggyback with the city on so they can get their grant application in.
I think that's a committee decision
And then
to make.
establish goodwill. So later on in 2024, we can ask for their participation in the furthering the trail, or at least cooperation or whatever.
I think that would be a committee decision to make, and Alana and Robin laid it out well in terms of the staff preference for that collaborative shared planning process, and then looking to a 2024 submission. But certainly, if the committee wants to support the City of Courtney submission this year, then there's a means to do so.
Well, I say that, you know, if it's low hanging fruit, we take it. So I would make that motion.
Motion. Director Armour? There's a motion being proposed, but there's a motion being proposed, but I didn't hear it.
That we work with the City of Courtney and we agree to fund 40% of their application for this year. And then we work with the City of Courtney again, perhaps on synergies on finishing the other portion of the trail. But I think it's important because they've already got their application ready to go, that we jump on board right now. At least it's going to address a lot of the serious issues on that Lake Trail corridor that have been niggling the residents up there for quite a long time. So I would move that we support Courtney and fund 40% of the application through our Rural Community Works.
And before I second it, do you want to specify? I'm tapped out on community works. So are you suggesting Area C community works funds? Just to specify it in the motion. Yeah. Second.
Bank of Area C is open for business.
Yeah. So I'm very happy to support this, Chair. Second.
I did have a question before voting on the recommendation number 2, and I think Director Grieve, if I understood you properly, was that you were in favor of supporting the City of Courtney's application and putting forward the 40% funds towards the project. But you also had made mention of the fact that the expectation was that the City of Courtney would collaborate with the CBRD for funding for the CBRD component of the project afterwards. Is that right? The light's green, but
No, I'll stop right at supporting the City of Courtney. You know, we can ask for that's okay. We'll just leave it at the City of Courtney at this point because we're already working on getting our ducks in a row for 2024. So let's just leave it right now. The iron's hot. Let's work with the city to get that portion done, and of course keep our options open later on down the road for more funding. But I don't need to tie it in. We're obviously building a good partnership with the city right now. So I think it's important to get that one piece. If it's going to happen, then it's, you know, that will also drive the impetus to finish it, whether or not it's in partnership or whether it's through grant funding or whatever. But right now, let's concentrate on the ask. So I support using Area C's Community Works to fund 40% of that of the application for the trail. If that's clear.
all right. So we have a recommendation.
Yeah, I think Robin might have one more bit to add.
Through the acting CEO to the directors, I just wanted to confirm one thing, that as we were directed in July, staff will be pursuing the Cumberland Courtney connector as our next priority project. Okay, thank you.
I think this is the critical piece.
So we have a recommendation put forward by Director Graves. Do we have a second? It's been seconded by Director Ever. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thanks again, Kellen, for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You as well. Okay, bye now.
All right. So we don't.
We take a bio break.
Sure. We'll take a 5-minute bio break. Thanks. All right, we'll get back into the agenda here, folks. So you get somebody make a motion to receive the interim report for the Comox Valley Regional District Agriculture Plan Update. All second, all in favor? Carried. So, welcome.
And Mr. Chair, I was going to introduce Lisa Kilpatrick, our Community Development and Resilience Manager, although maybe she hasn't quite come back from the break. And so
Want to meet
can
them?
we just take just another minute or two until
We're going to take another 2-minute recess here.
thanks.
Thanks. All right, appreciate everybody's patience here on Monday. It's not Monday the 13th, I guess.
Monday after Friday the 13th.
There we go.
Yeah. So
James.
Lisa Kilpatrick, our Community Development and Resilience Manager, is here to introduce the staff report, the interim report on the Comox Valley Regional District Agricultural Plan Update. So Lisa, over to you.
Good morning, through the chair to the directors. Elena Mullally just made some copies of the report there for folks. So thank you. We're here this morning to present the final interim report for the agricultural update or agricultural plan update. I have Ione Smith here from Upland Agricultural Consulting, who's been working with us on the development of the plan. So the report that you have in front of you is a summary of research engagement and analysis to date. Based on the feedback from the ag community in early 2023, we felt that we needed to go out for more engagement to allow for the community to feel that the issues that were important to them were really heard by the CVRD. And so this report is a culmination of that information that we've received. And it's a touch point on the direction that we're heading as we move forward with the development of the plan. So I'm going to let Ione take it from here and provide that comprehensive review.
Thank you, Lisa, and through the chair, thank you all for having me here today. As Lisa mentioned, this is an opportunity for me as one of the consultants working on the project to provide you with a process and progress overview on how the project is going by a presentation of this interim report. In addition to Lisa, we've had the benefit of having Jody McLean from the CVRD working on this project with us. And I'm here representing a team of 4 consultants. We are a mix of professional agrologists and also registered professional planners from Upland Agricultural Consulting and Urban Food Strategies who've been working on this project. We have conducted 19 agricultural plans across the province. We're currently also working in Delta, Pitt Meadows, and the Cowichan Valley Valley as well at the current time. I just wanted to provide a reminder of the 4 key objectives, and each of these key objectives has resulted in a specific deliverable. The first was to review relevant information regarding the local agriculture and agri-food sector, and that culminated in a background report, which had quite a lot of technical information in it and is available as an appendix to the interim report. We then did an assessment and an evaluation of the older agricultural plan from about 20 years ago. And that audit of recommended actions from that plan was conducted and presented in the initial interim report. We then went out, as Lisa indicated, to engage with the agricultural community, and we've provided a lot of the detailed results from that engagement within a summary report, which is also in the appendix, and I'll go through some of the key results in this presentation as well. And from those first three key objectives, we've crafted a final interim report with some recommended next steps as a way of providing some direction to the final agricultural plan itself. With regards to the process, we started this work about 16 months ago now with that background report and review of technical data. And now we're towards this end where we've crafted an interim report, and we're looking forward to creating the final strategy or agricultural plan. So we are on time in terms of the anticipated timeline from the original work plan. I mentioned that the background report had quite a lot of technical information. This included a review of the historical and pre-colonial food production. We did have some input from Comox First Nation at that point in time for the background report, which was extremely helpful in terms of historical context. We also provided a biophysical context, which is more of a review of soil, water, climate, and weather data to look at what is and isn't feasible with regards to agricultural production in the valley. And we also did a deeper dive into the economic overview of the agricultural sector for the Comox Valley. And finally, within that background report, we came up with an initial set of opportunities and challenges, and these were then vetted through the engagement process. With regard to that engagement, we conducted approximately 30 interviews with key stakeholders and representatives from the local agriculture and agri-food sector. We also held 3, now 4 project advisory committee meetings. The last one was just held last week or 2 weeks ago. The project advisory committee is comprised of a number of individuals from the community representing different aspects of the agriculture and agri-food sector. And they've been really helpful in helping to provide direction and also being able to provide touch points for us with every deliverable so that we could present drafts. We also held 5 workshops and meetings with CVRD staff from different departments so that we could get a better sense of the types of different initiatives that are currently underway across the regional district that would implicate or impact agriculture. We held 3 specific stakeholder meetings with organizations such as the Comox Valley Farmers Institute, the Mid-Island Farmers Institute, and the Comox Valley Farmers Market Association, so we could hear directly from their leadership around what the initiatives they are undertaking, as well as what some of the challenges are that they're experiencing. In addition to those targeted meetings, we also held more public-facing meetings. So we held 4 in-person themed community meetings, which some of you, I believe, attended. And the themes were around water, land use, emergency planning, and economic viability. And those meetings were held within the community and were open to the public. However, they did attract mainly the folks who were involved directly in agriculture. For those who were not able to attend those meetings in person, we also offered a virtual webinar information session back in June, and the opportunity to provide written feedback, of which we received 7 submissions. There was an open online portal for feedback that was available for approximately 6 months as well. Insofar as who we ended up engaging with, there was a total of 113 touch points. The vast majority, as you can see, over 70% of the people that we engaged with identified as either producers, so farmers and ranchers, or food processors. Another 12% were CVRD government staff and provincial government staff, such as Ministry of Agriculture and Food. Another 10% represented local organizations, and then 6% represented the general public. So we crafted this graph to try and get a sense of how well we did with targeted engagement, and having been able to reach over 70% of the people that we talked to being producers and processors, we were happy that we were able to reach that many involved directly in agriculture in the Valley. So all of that information helped us to craft this final interim report. The interim report lays out our findings into 3 central themes. They are to create a new vision and structure for the Comox Valley Agricultural Plan, and we have crafted a draft vision statement, which I will present. The second theme is to address 6 specific agricultural topic areas, which I will go into in a bit more detail. And lastly, to develop a strong implementation plan and a report card to monitor progress. This last theme is really important because in the previous agricultural plan, the vast majority of actions were not implemented, specifically because a lot of them were directed towards different levels of government or organizations, and therefore were out of the jurisdiction of the regional district itself. So insofar as that second theme, where the direction is to look specifically at 6 topic areas, the topic areas will likely not be of any surprise to you who have been hearing likely from the agricultural community over the last year or so about these key problems or challenges. And the top one, of course, is around water. So the first topic area is to steward water resources to best meet agricultural water needs. The second is to protect agricultural land and to protect the producer themselves. The third is to support actions that will help grow the regional agricultural economy. The fourth is to work collaboratively for climate change adaptation and emergency preparedness. The fifth is to advocate on behalf of producers to senior levels of government, specifically around issues where the regional district may not have a role to play in terms of direct planning and decision-making. And then lastly, to strengthen the communication in and awareness of the local agricultural sector. So that last one is more around education and celebration and bringing the public in. Throughout our work, we also identified specific areas of interest that were technically outside of the scope of our work, but that we felt could be integrated into a Comox Valley agricultural plan as recommended next steps. And we've presented them in the interim report in a table format, which also helps to examine how the approach might be taken, whether it's from a full regional approach or more of a rural approach. So there's 7 areas of interest that have come up. The first is to do a very detailed assessment of the economic and environmental value of agriculture for the Valley. The second is to look at market opportunities for the Comox Valley. So specifically, if a new farmer wanted to come and set up a farm, a lot of people wondered if there was information about what would be most feasible. So a market opportunities assessment specifically for the community would be really valuable. The concept of a regional food security plan was also floated several times. Food security is obviously related, but not completely always aligned to the goals of an agricultural plan. So looking at community food security and how that might be increased and amplified through a strong local food system. Mapping regional agricultural assets and infrastructure. Some of that initial work has been done through the aligning food hub feasibility study, but there remains some opportunities to expand on that work. There's also a lot of interest right now within the community around being compensated for maintaining and restoring highly valuable biodiverse portions of farm properties and looking at ecological goods and services compensation. There's some provincial programs that are currently out there right now. So there's interested in seeing how that could be tailored to a more regional opportunity. And then the last 2 are services. So the first being an agricultural service. And I know the regional district has done a great job around in the past hiring an agricultural coordinator. So this would be an expansion of some of that work. And the water resource stewardship service. There was a lot of interest within the agricultural community of discussing how a service like that could benefit the agricultural sector. So we do have a recommended next step, and that is to keep proceeding with completing the agricultural plan update and including a final round of engagement where a draft copy of the agricultural plan would be presented to the agricultural community. We anticipate that will take about 4 months from today to complete so that it's brought back to the community for a final review. And I wanted to leave you with the draft vision statement that was created for the revised Comox Valley Agricultural Plan. And this is a forward-thinking statement about the future for farming in the Valley. And that is that the food-producing history of the Comox Valley, including during pre-colonial times when Indigenous food systems were abundant, will continue to influence this growing sector of the local economy today and into the future. With a mix of small, medium, and large-scale enterprises focused on a diversity of markets, the Valley's farms will produce quality products. Farmers will be supported in their stewardship of land and water resources and become resilient to the impacts of climate change. The community will nurture a new generation of farmers with the capacity and resources to adapt and innovate in order to continue to build a thriving agriculture and food system in the Comox Valley. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Director Green?
Yeah, so to the chair and CEO, I see some of this language actually is lifted right off the one from 2022, just almost verbatim. So, you know, I do know that a lot of these plans, 20 years later, we got the same issues. So, first of all, let me thank you, both staff and yourself, for taking so much time to reach out in a community that is a community where if you ask 5 different people, they're going to get 7 different answers. So it's a very diverse bunch, as you know, not necessarily all on the same page. You got to look at their own piece of what they want to see out of this. I think that what's missing for me is much like when we went out during COVID and we did that survey of businesses and stakeholders, and we got all this information that 80% of it was actually nothing to do with local government, right? It was, they were on about the liquor inspector at the wineries and whatever, and I see that here too, a lot of misconceptions of what the regional district is already doing. And, insofar as buffers between agricultural land and urban areas, all that stuff that we've already kind of addressed in a lot of ways. But what we had to do before, with all that massive information that we had with the COVID recovery plan, was we had to go back one more time, and we had to say, okay, give us your top 2 from your sector. What's the 2 things that is within our purview as local government that we can actually do, which is mostly around regulatory, licensing, the land use planning, all the stuff that we can do, right? So I see that it's a lot of it's all over the map, and it would be, because you have so many people putting in here. There's a lot of areas that talks about overweighting, for God's sake. We hadn't had overweighting for what, 15 years? I think that what has to happen is we have to release this document. I'm full support of receiving it and getting it in the public, but I think there needs to be one more chance. Well, I think you alluded to it there, where we can go out for one more consultation with the groups. And I don't mean like a Tuesday, 11 o'clock in the morning meeting, something that you actually take it to the streets. So you go to the Mid-Isle Farmers Institute meeting, you go to the Comox Valley Farmers, you go to the Comox Valley Farmers Market Association, and let the rank and file kind of kick it around a bit too, right? Because my understanding is mostly the board of directors that you were dealing with. So I think we need to focus it a little bit more, and focus it on stuff that we can actually affect change on. You know, you have to ask people, do you see yourself represented in this plan? Do you see that in this implementation plan? Do we get it right? Edit some of the mistakes in there. I guess that comes part and parcel with it, right? But we need to, I think, just narrow it down a bit and ask for the top 3 or the top 2 or whatever from the different groups, what they see as being something we can actually concentrate on. The other thing too is, of course, this was funded through the province. And correct me if I'm wrong, did the rest come from what function? Did it come from regional growth strategy or general admin or one of the usual slush funds we use? So,
Confirm with Lisa, the regional growth strategy funded the remainder.
No.
Planning, rural planning.
Rural
Function
planning section.
500, area.
Okay,
ABC
so
planning.
it is the property of the electoral areas.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Then that's good. I mean, I know it's a lot of money into this already, but I do think that it needs to be just let it sit on the back burner and simmer for a little while rather than take action. So when you talk about your next outreach, what exactly do you envision?
Sure. Yeah. So I just want to comment that I'm totally on the same page with you as to what you're talking about in terms of creating recommended actions that are specifically implementable by local government. And you mentioned that in the older plan, there was many of the same issues, right? And we're still seeing them. And part of the reason for that is because the older plan had actions that were not within the purview of local government to actually solve.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is take the same themes, or when the themes are still consistent, and create specific actions that the CVRD can actually move ahead with and implement themselves. And that's when the implementation strategy will be crafted to go with it. So this next phase will take what we've heard so far, and just as you said, we'll start to narrow it down and get really specific about those actions, identify roles and responsibilities, identify whether additional budgets are going to be required for implementation, and look at specific priority levels and timelines as well.
Because I guess, you know, I mean, deal with the farming community, like you say, they're all fiercely independent. Everybody's got their own deeply held beliefs, sort of like fishermen, I guess, in the day, right? You know, they're all independent bunch. So, yeah, I think that's what has to happen. I think we see some themes already coming out of this. I mean, water, number one, bam, you know. Mm-hmm. Then again, your water, well, you're dealing with the upland resource people, you know, the private forest lands, and good luck with that. Yeah, you know, and you're dealing with DFO, you know, and some of the stuff in here is, you know, I think a lot of the people know better, but you know, we can only go so much with that. The other thing is a permanent farmers market. You know, that I think would be a no-brainer if you're going to be putting your money. So we need the top 3. What are the top 3? I mean, a lot of it's window dressing. There's very lack of any actual hard-nosed business acumen in here. Like there's nothing on the retail side so much, you know, outside of the farmers market, you know, there's no, another thing too, I guess it was just hard data. I guess that was in the preamble. I mean,
yeah,
you just had the census and all that. I mean, my understanding is the acreage under farming is going down. The number of farmers are going down. The products are going down, everything's going in the wrong direction. So, you know, what can we do as local government other than advocate to senior government, which, you know, we see how that goes. You know, when you come to advocacy, and I was just talking about the rainwater management plan of Saratoga has been languishing for 3 years. So we can only do so much, but if we can just hone it down to an action plan that lists things that we can actually do, the very top stuff, because we don't have an unlimited budget. We don't have a service, you know, and Lisa's doing all the work, so on the side of her desk, basically. So, I think we have to have a hard discussion around what's the most cost-effective way for the regional district to get involved. Are we going to establish an agricultural service? My understanding was they had an agricultural service in the Alberni Valley, but I was told, no, that's not true. So the other thing would be to expand the role of the AAPC into something else has more jurisdiction. We gotta thrash this out. So yeah, I'm happy to hear it's going to go out for another go round, because I do think that, like with the recovery plan that we had with the Comox Valley different business sectors, we asked them basically the second time out, yeah, but what's your top 2 or 3, right? Which is and then it got more real. So I'd be willing to support it. I would think that, though, rather than moving a recommendation right now, we put it in the public space, and then we come back to that. So I don't know what the committee feels about that, but I think that there are people out there that categorically will not participate in local government processes at all. So I want to hear from the quieter voices out there. We hear from the loud ones all the time. I mean, and I think that an engagement with the rank and file, rather than just having an open house at the Merville Hall, which was great. Don't get me wrong. Like I say, a lot of work went into this. So it just needs some kind of a focus that, obviously not pleasing everybody ever. But like I say, I mean, water, that's a no-brainer. Direct sales, farmers market, that's a no-brainer. Secondary processing, chop and bag, cut and wrap. I mean, that kind of stuff. We talk about the food hub, how this all plays into it, right? And these are really emotive issues in my community. They're very much so, and they're very divided. So how do we pull it together? I think one more kick at the can, and just tell everybody, well, get real. What do you see as something that's actually doable? What can we actually do moving forward? Because we don't have a budget. We don't have a function. We have some staff time that we put into this, and we did get some money from the ministry. So I mean, it's not going to come. It's not going to be for naught, right? It's all good stuff. But when I read through it, I see so many errors, that in people's perceptions. But that's. I think there's a possibility of doing just focusing on the top 3 or the top 4, whatever, just stuff that we can actually do, and then we come back with that. So, I just like I say, I ask you if your next outreach is going to include going to where they live, going to the people one more time. With that, let's get serious.
So to that, the next engagement point hasn't been fully fleshed out yet, but we can do that. We can provide you with more of a specific plan for the engagement. We weren't just thinking about an open house, for example. As I mentioned in the last round of engagement, we were able to, reach out to over 70 producers and processors in the community. We do feel like we heard from a good range of folks involved in the agriculture and agri-food sector. As you mentioned, there's a lot of diverse opinions out there. And I think we were able to distill it into 6 key themes that kept coming up that everybody could agree with. And so within those 6 key themes is what we're going to be using to craft this implementation plan and the specific recommended actions. And then we will take that back to the agricultural community using a variety of means, just as we did in that last stage of engagement, to make sure that they have an opportunity to review them and provide feedback. We don't want to rush it, but at the same time, we've heard from that community that the best time to reach them and engage with them is over the winter months.
Over the winter months. Yeah,
because once we hit April or May, no one's going to be able to have time to meet with us. So with that in mind, we are hoping to be able to move forward and craft the draft of the agricultural plan to be able to present to them by January.
Did we have participation in the retail end?
Yes, I don't have the specific list off the top of my
So,
mind,
the
but
Courtney Country Market kind of thing?
I believe so.
farm
I'd have to
market.
go back and look at the list of
Yeah,
stakeholders.
Because that's what, you know, I mean, I was raised with the Economic Development Society and that Innovate 2030, which I think, you know, was hard-nosed business stuff, right? You had people in the industry that, you know, people are experts in exporting product and all this, you know, so it's too bad we don't have that business acumen as part of this fabric.
And that's something that came up. I don't know if I can move backwards on the slides, but that is something that came up as one of those additional initiatives that could benefit the community, which is that market analysis piece and the market opportunities piece, because it was outside of scope for this project. But there is interest in the community having more information. You noted that there was information from the agricultural census, the agricultural land use inventory, the Innovate project, but we don't have access to really specific data around the market piece at this granular level, because that would entail an entirely side project, like an additional project. But it would be of value, and the community did also identify, as you have, that would be of value to them.
Because as I say, you know, my community is pretty down to earth, and you know, their thing is, you know, just get government out of our way. You know, and they're facing big tasks. I mean, so, you know, there's always that feeling that you know, government's only a bother. They're only going to tie you up with red tape, kind of thing. So we have to, yeah, I think there's stuff we can do on the regulatory side. The stuff we can do, we already have done. They talked about, you know, getting building permits on ALR land. Well, we don't require building permits on ALR land. We've been twice now we've turned that away because it's another impediment for farmers. So, yeah, I think I can support it going forward and get something out of it that we can actually roll up our sleeves and get to work on. I mean, local government is here to help. You know, contrary to what some people believe out there, but you know, once again, though, you guys, thanks you so much for, you know, wading into this pool. But I think it just needs to simmer for a while and a little more focus on it, and somehow bring the business sense into it. Because if there's no business case for farming, then it's a labor of love, basically. Well, and what's the return? 5% on the dollar, you know? Yeah. So again, sort of like the old fishermen, right? They go out there just to get the price of diesel so they can go up Butte Inlet because they love it so much. It's not like they're going to catch any fish. Anyway, I'm sorry I've talked long enough. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your points, Director Grieve. Director Arbor, did you have any comments? I did have a few. Thanks again for the interim report. Some of the things the big items that I took away from the report again was the agriculture service. I think, you know, it may be time for us to seriously consider putting in agriculture service moving forward. The water stewardship part, I think, is very important as well, especially based upon climate change. One of the thoughts that was kind of going through the back of my mind, and I know it's kind of probably outside the scope of your work here, but again, when we start looking at the direction of water, and I saw in some of the reports there were concerns about ditches that couldn't be put in place that end up having flooding in fields. And then there's the other side of things where you're trying to run ditches out from flooding fields, and that becomes an issue with DFO. Edwin made mention of private forest management areas, and again, forest activities. Where I'm going with this is, again, I'm really curious, and I would really like to see if we can come up with some data down the road in regards to when we start looking at the new inland highway, when we start looking at forest activities, there's a lot of diversion of water to help build logging roads and extract water in a different direction than it maybe naturally would have occurred, where it ends up going down these various crevices into aquifers, etc. So I'm just kind of curious if, and like I said, it's probably not within this scope, but trying to look at data to how water was directed 25 years ago in comparison to where it is today. And like I said, you look at that new highway, various logging roads have been put in place where they divert water just so it doesn't wash out their logging roads, et cetera, right? What kind of an impact has that had in regards to, you know, some of the issues that we talked about with climate change? So I just threw that one out there as well. Another key item again was the advocacy role with higher levels of governments with the province of British Columbia and Canada. And I know the three directors here have no problems with rolling up their sleeves and going meeting with federal and provincial government agencies, ministers, deputy ministers. What we need is some speaking notes and some high level concerns put forward by the group here so we can go and have those conversations. And like I said, I'll be the first one there. One of the other items that I thought was interesting with regards to water stewardship was the point that was made in regards to delegated decision-making processes. And just wonder if you can maybe, without going into a whole bunch of detail, but maybe a high level detail in regards to where the group thought that that would go.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was in so far as when there's different water restriction levels that come forward during a drought situation about how water is allocated. So where I'm from on the Sunshine Coast, you may have heard in the news in the last 3 summers, farmers have been cut off from irrigating. And I know that that's affected this part of the island as well and down in the Cowichan as well. So you know, working within the scope of your jurisdiction to determine what are those priorities for water when you do have control. I mean, at a certain point of drought, it may, you know, be removed from control and go to the province, which it has happened. But insofar as when it is within the jurisdiction of local governments, determining where agriculture falls within that list of priorities for use. I mean, I think, you know, nobody would argue that residential uses are probably a higher priority. However, in some communities, agricultural users are being cut off before other commercial or industrial users. So that was the flavor of that conversation for sure.
Thanks. I have one more question in regards to enforcement. And that was one of the things that I saw in the report as well, is again, you know, once bylaws are put in place or once the province has its laws and regulations in place, it's one thing to get the regulations and the bylaws in place. It's another thing to enforce them. And I know in years past, having conversations with the province of British Columbia, even those folks are kind of scratching their heads saying, how do we go about doing that enforcement? So I think down the road, that's going to be an important item that we need to focus on as well.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So one of the benefits of having an agricultural plan is that you have then a documentation of what some of those key compliance issues might be on farmland. And you can then take that to the Agricultural Land Commission and work with them in a more collaborative way. An example would be the city of Kelowna, who updated their agricultural plan in 2018. And they were able to then work with the ALC in a pilot project targeting specific areas within the community that were known to have some of the more egregious infractions and work in a really proactive way with folks who were doing things on farmland that they may not they shouldn't be doing without permits. And that has gone so well and has been so successful that they've now expanded it out to the entire regional district of Central Okanagan. But it started with an agricultural plan and it started with identifying what those key issues were and having that on paper.
Great, thanks. Any other comments or questions before we vote on receipt of the report? All in favor of receive report then? Carried. And then we have a recommendation. Director Greve?
Here we go. Thanks. Once again, I'm thinking this just leave the recommendation simmer for a while. And now the report is received, it's in the public domain, and just give it a little longer for the unofficial consultation process to take place so people can have a look at this. And then at a later date, we can go forward to the next round of engagement, whatever that is. That's my gut feeling anyway. Thanks.
I think staff would certainly like to have the understanding from the committee that we were able to move to that next step of engagement. And I think as Ione identified, the actual engagement isn't fleshed out yet. There is opportunity to be more specific with some of that outreach with the institutes and with the different stakeholders and community members. So I think that engagement does need to be fleshed out a little bit more. And I think the recommendation presented here certainly allows us to be able to dig in a little bit more and get specific, as you were indicating, get specific with some of the implementation and actions. And then be able to come back to this committee if needed, if that's what the committee is needing, a little bit more specific direction on what the engagement looks like. But I would worry that if we only receive the report here today, then there's no further direction or action in terms of Ione's work and that subsequent engagement. So I think staff would prefer to see the recommendation supported here, and then we can come back with that more fleshed out engagement plan.
Okay, I'll second that.
Yeah, if I could jump in, I agree with James. I think, Edwin, what we're suggesting to staff is go out there and do the work that you've been talking about. So it's not just sitting back and waiting for another 4 or 5 months. And then after that, let's move into and get more engagement with folks. It's like, let's get out there and start engaging with folks right now. Is kind of how I read the recommendation. So we'll vote on recommendation. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 4, weed control bylaw amendments.
Move weed control bylaw amendment.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mark Hart, Parks Planner, will be introducing this staff report and a couple of others on this agenda. So Mark, over to you.
Right back at you. Through the chair, I bring to you the weed control bylaw with some recommendations for update. Just some background. I'll forgive you if you're not familiar with it. It was established in 2001, most recently amended in 2005, and is here today for some minor amendments to bring it up to speed with the standard of our other bylaws. So Parks is proposing two, I guess maybe I'll take a step back. The bylaw itself is intended to regulate noxious weeds within the electoral areas. And Parks is proposing 2 amendments to the bylaw today. The first being housekeeping amendments to bring it up to the standard. It still references the Strathcona Regional District, so we'll update those words and then the second proposal is a bit more complicated, but not significantly so. As a slight clarification on the process for how the bylaw works. As it stands currently, a private landowner would be notified that that there are noxious weeds on their property as identified in Schedule A of the bylaw, and be asked to remove those weeds within 14 days. If the weeds are removed, no further actions required. If not, then the CVRD is empowered to remove them and refer those costs back to the owner. And if the owner is unable to pay them, then there'll be a lien on their property tax at the end of the year. So that's the current process. The new process is very similar, with the exception that if a property owner, they're given 30 days instead of the original 14, and if they're unable or unwilling to remove the weeds, they are eligible for a hearing before this committee to discuss the issue, and this committee can choose to issue an order for their removal, and then we go back to the original process in which the CVRD can remove it or the owner can remove it. I should say that these changes in red really are a clarification of what was likely intended in the original bylaw. There was mention briefly in the bylaw of an appeal, but it was not elaborated on and no process was specified. These changes in red are intended to make that appeal more clear. And I'm open to questions.
Yeah, I got a couple for you in regards to the timelines associated with removal of weeds. And I get and understand that there is that need for removal, but whether it's 14 days or 30 days, I guess there's things that we need to take into consideration with regards to extenuating circumstances. For example, say it's myself and it's my property and I'm going through chemotherapy for cancer right now. And the CVRE's come back with a letter saying you need to remove your weeds within the next 14 days. Or else we're going to go in there and remove them for you, and then we're going to charge you accordingly. So I guess that's my concern when we start putting forward some of these recommendations or requirements that we also look at extenuating circumstances. For example, some folks leave the country for a couple of months to go to Asia or over to Europe or whatever. A notice gets sent saying you got 14 days to get things done and you're over in Europe. So how we kind of addressing those is a concern that I have. Thanks.
So unfortunately, no representatives from the bylaw group were able to attend today, but I can refer that question back to them, and we could, if the committee would like, we can bring further amendments back to this committee if so desired.
I could just add that in the majority of bylaw compliance cases, they are unique and individual, and so the bylaw compliance staff do understand that, and we'll work with the complainant, the property owner, and they're all very contextual. They all have unique situations, and so I think there is some flexibility around those circumstances that maybe apply in certain situations and not in others. Whether this bylaw and the changes would need to be updated to reflect that, I don't know if I could tell you that, and that might be something we have to bring back. But certainly, in practice, bylaw compliance does look at every situation for its own conditions.
Director Auer?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, maybe we could defer this one until we can have a little bit more from bylaw. I mean, my thought, which is semi-related, is I'm not sure we're even enforcing on ourselves. So I was at last month, I was in Kilmarnock at one of the beach accesses that we maintain of Hardy Road, and there was some trees that came down, and I talked with the owners, and they're like, we can't even get the entire beach access is just covered with English ivy, and we have never done anything about it, and we're responsible for it. They were saying that they want to organize neighborhood parties to try to remove it or whatnot, and they haven't found a lot of traction at the CVRD to do that or to support the effort. So I find it a bit much that we would go after homeowners when we ourselves are not doing a good job of looking after our own properties. So maybe I would like staff to take that into consideration, and that we defer this item for further conversation in the future.
Yeah, we're still in receipt of the report. So first and foremost, we'll receive the report, vote on receipt. All in favor? Carry. Second, moving on to recommendation.
Future meeting with more information. How this is currently enforced, including us.
You want to second that, Em? All in favor? Carried. So we're going to defer. Thanks. Parkland Development Charge Bylaw Amendments.
And Mark Cart again to present the staff report. Mark.
Thank you. So I'm bringing this report back to you. It was initially our previous report was brought in 2022 to propose amendments to the Parkland DCC bylaw. And this committee at that time approved those amendments. Unfortunately, the province found fault with some words in the bylaw and asked us to come back. So we're proposing that we rescind those initial amendments and come back with a new set. Just as a reminder, the Parkland DCC bylaw was established in 2012 to help support the implementation of the Rural Parks and Greenways Strategic Plan. As you are well aware, development cost charges are an important part of how we fund our capital projects. And from a parks perspective, they are a critical component of our capital plan. When we first established or built our strategic plan, the Parks and Greenways strategic plan, we identified $3 million in eligible DCC costs, things that we could fund with development cost charges. And those estimates were based on surprisingly accurate estimates of growth in the region. And in fact, we're well in line with coming up to that. We're well in line with that estimate. Unfortunately, to date, we've only collected about $80,000 of those $3 million, far behind where we should be. And I think I know that the reason that came about is a small error in the way we implement the bylaw. And so we're proposing a few changes, some germane to that question and others just more clarifying. The first being that we clarify that tourist commercial accommodations are levied on a per bedroom basis rather than a per room basis. So they wouldn't be for kitchens or bathrooms and so on and so forth. And more germane to that point I just made on the previous slide is DCC should be paid at the building permit application. Currently for single family homes, they're applied at the subdivision level. As you're probably well aware, we issue a lot more building permits than subdivisions, considerably more so. And it appears to me that most of the development in the valley is being done at the building permit level, not the subdivision level. Further to that, we recommend that DCCs are levied at a per dwelling unit basis rather than on a per lot basis. This aligns for all of the various DCCs that the bylaw includes. So currently, multifamily residential are applied at a per unit basis, and single family homes are on a per lot basis. But as we're all aware, you can build more than one house on a single family lot in the Comox Valley. And I'm open to questions.
Director Arbor. Yeah, thanks. That's a really great catch and staff report on this issue. And obviously, nothing's ever obvious, but I'm definitely in favor of the recommended changes. I think we have struggled at the CVRD to find monies for park acquisitions or for maintaining our parks. And this type of approach, I think, is totally legitimate. If I'm building a new home and I hear that I got $1,000 that's going to go to acquire new parks or improve parks in my area, I think I'll be happy to contribute. And it's sad to see that was missed out in 2012. All the revenues that could have been raised could have helped us purchase Stoughton. That might have made a difference with the amount collected over that time. So moving forward, as per our strategic plan for rural areas, for the rural park, Greenways Park, I'm in favor. But I do have maybe to open it for some further consideration or discussion. You do not suggest whether those DCCs would go into our rural park service or whether we would apportion some to the new regional park service. I would be happy to propose that we have a secondary motion that if staff hasn't done this, that we approach the municipalities to see if they have a DCC scheme like that, and if all of us were willing to assign some of those, a portion of those DCCs to the regional park service as a sustainable funding mechanism for the new service, which has basically no money in it right now. So I don't know if that's been considered by staff or if it was just envisioned that this would be solely for the rural parks.
I can speak at a high level to that. My understanding is that the Parkland DCC bylaw is a companion to the rural parks and greenways, rural community parks and greenways service, 621 specifically. And there's been no discussion about sharing those funds with the new regional park service. And my understanding, and I probably should defer to the CAO on this, is that the process would be to develop a separate DCC bylaw for that regional parks and trail service. But I
would concur. And I think with the regional parks and trails committee undertaking its strategic planning work, I think that is a very valid point of consideration at the regional scale for those regional parks and acquisition in the future. And Mark's right, this particular discussion is really around the ABC Park Service.
Edwin, do you have any comments?
Not too much really, except that I think it's a good idea putting it at the building permit stage. And insofar as the other parks, the greater park service, because of the fact it's so new, it would be a discussion maybe we could have offline with some of the members and the municipalities, but I'm thinking that we just deal with our own parks right now and maybe bring it up at a later date because it is so new and people are a little apprehensive. So rather than cloud the waters right now, let's just move ahead with the recommendation.
With that being said, all in favor of receive the report? Carried. Have a move on the recommendation. All in favor? Carried. All right, do we want to deal with item number 6 and then maybe go for lunch after that? Thank you. All in favor?
And one more over to Mark Hart.
Mark, you're on again.
Thank you through the chair. This is a report back to a report that we brought to this committee in August regarding the shingle spit boat ramp on Hornby Island. At that time, the committee requested that we come back with some funding options for them to consider to fund the reconstruction of the boat ramp and the parking lot associated. Just a reminder, the cost of that project is estimated at about $500,000. Just a little history, the boat ramp was taken on a license by the CVRD in 2018. The province owns the infrastructure and licenses its operation out to the CVRD and specifically to the Hornby Park Service. Shortly after taking on the license, the CVRD became aware of the fact that the boat ramp was in disrepair and required immediate replacement. And we have been seeking, the Parks Department has been seeking funding opportunities since that time to affect that change. So we're bringing and here's some, just in case you've forgotten, the boat ramp really does need to be replaced. Whether the CVRD does it or someone else, it's clearly in disrepair. Parks Department brings forward a few options for your consideration. The first is our preferred option, which would be an amendment to the 2023-2027 financial plan. With an allocation of $50,000 from the unallocated community works funds, $150,000 reallocated from the Denman Island Fire Hall project, and a $300,000 short-term borrowing scheme, which would include a 35 to 40% increase in the tax requisition for the service over the life of the borrowing. Option 2 is very similar to option 1, except it would be brought forward as part of the next financial planning process. And a third option would be to return the ramp to the province and allow them to manage it as they see fit, possibly as part of a BC Ferries terminal upgrade that's planned for the coming years.
Director Harbour. Yep, thanks to staff for coming back with this, and it was a good discussion in August. I'm going to get a lot of questions in the communities about this one, so I'll state it here so that it's on public record. The thinking behind the approach, and then I'll ask the committee to consider one small change before we consider the motion. So the boat rent was taken over number of years ago, and at the time we actually estimated that maybe 80 grand or something like that. It was a smaller amount that was contemplated when we took it over, that we thought it would be required to actually fix the boat ramp. Then we hired some engineers, and they basically said, underneath the boat ramp everything is fluffing, it's gonna cave, it just doesn't have longevity, so it requires a fairly substantial level of commitment, financial commitment. We then applied, I think, twice for grants for the boat ramp, and made the link to both users and emergency management. We were sadly declined on both grant opportunities. And so now we're here a number of years later, and there's still a lot of concern both from HIRA, and from HIRA actually created a committee to support this, and from boaters as well, that the problem is not being addressed. I don't have any evidence that returning it to the province would lead to a change or investment in the boat ramp. That is why they gave it to local government, happily. So in August, we were contemplating the future, and I suggested that we look at a full reallocation of different funds to this. And I think the scheme you're proposing, so there's two things I would do. One is the 50K. I think that I've got 67,500 or 62,500 of community works fund. So I would say just throw the whole amount in there, whatever is left, and then I can say that we've concluded community works fund for the 10 years to 2024, which is coming up in a couple of months. The second is in regards to the fire hall, and I know I'll get questions on Denman about that. Denman and Hornby tend to be in the same baskets for a number of funds, including community works, and we had consideration of growing communities funds as well. Denman has seen a lot of investment come to the island the last 2 or 3 years, and I try to keep it balanced between the two islands. For this one, I would actually ask that we allocate the full 300K from the fire hall, understanding that the fire hall will benefit from the growing communities fund allocation. I would remind island residents that Hornby got 0 in grant for their fire hall, and that a bunch of us at local government argued really hard at the province to actually include fire halls as an eligible category, which we successfully did, which Denman will benefit through that contribution of, I think, close to 800,000 or something like that they'll get in funding. So I would like to use the full 300, which would leave 150K in short-term borrowing. And that 150K in short borrowing, I'll tell the board here that one of the feedback I get on Hornby and Denman is this is a big project for a certain amount of users, not a ton of users. People do recognize the emergency aspect value of the boat ramp on Hornby, and it's also accessed sometimes for construction projects. But I want to recognize that the boat ramp has never seen user fees at our boat ramp. So I would like to proceed with the 150K short-term borrowing, 300K reallocated, but also with a commitment either in the motion or otherwise with staff to implement a user fee. And this could be just people, it could be an honor system where people go on their phone. We've got it on the sign at the boat ramp that, and Union Bank could actually teach us a thing or two about implementing systems so that people contribute. So to implement a user fees, and even if we did like 10 grand a year in user fee collected, could be less than that, but say that we made 10 grand a year. What is it after 50 years when replacement comes up? That's your money. You know, you're starting to see that the users are contributing to the maintenance and replacement of the asset over time, so that this situation does not happen again, that we end up with a stranded asset with no financial plan to support it. And on that basis, I'd be happy to support that level of investment in the boat ramp. So return it to Mr. Chair, but I would like to just have that amendment in the motion on the amounts allocation and then that little sidebar around implementing user fees.
So I think first we'll vote on receipt, right? Hey, start pick things up here. I did have a question for you, Mark, in regards to, again, the $500,000 for the cost of the project. Does that include the removal of the already existing ramp?
Through the chair, that's my understanding. Yeah, it's it covers. So we had a range of options presented to us, but this baseline 500,000 is to cover the replacement of the boat ramp itself and to upgrade the parking area associated with it.
And a follow-up question with regards to the Comox First Nations heritage policy. If we run into issues there, is there contingency funds within that 500,000 to cover any costs that might end up occurring for having to do some of that heritage work?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not aware of that, but the 500,000 that I'm familiar with is strictly for engineering. I don't believe there was any contingency set aside for any challenges with cultural heritage or archaeology.
I just bring that up because BC Ferries not too long ago decided they were going to knock a tree over and opened up Pandora's box there. So I just want to make sure, you know, all of a sudden a project that was supposed to take 2 months takes 6 months or whatever, and there's additional costs. So if we're taking those into consideration, or do we need to take those into consideration moving forward? Thanks, Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. It's a worthy consideration. I believe obviously the boat ramp itself is all in the intertidal zone, but the road leading to it, some of it is fill from over time because it's right at the bottom of a cliff, but some of it could actually have some older grounds, if you will, that could have. So I would say for today, it's hard to adjust in an amount in projection of potential costs regarding that, but I think that's something that could be flagged later on as the project gets into pre-planning and planning mode, to do that consultation as we do with KFN and for them to identify it, and then they staff can come back to the committee if a significant amount of resources is required to address that.
So I was just going to reiterate that is what we would be working with Comox on, the cultural heritage permit investigation permit process, and yeah, if there was any kind of change to the project through that investigation permit, we would be coming back to speak with the committee. I was also wondering if I could ask Kevin if you had anything to speak to in regards to the change in the community works funds assignment that Director Arbor was mentioning.
Thank you, through the acting CAO and the chair to the directors. So yes, just to confirm the current unallocated balance remaining for Denman and Hornby Islands, it's actually 65,680.25 cents. So we could then allocate that full remaining amount. And just to confirm, yes, currently we do have $300,000 allocated to the Denman Fire Hall service that, if this motion passes, would then get reallocated to this project. which would then leave the $150,000 or yes, the $150,000 in short-term debt. Just for the committee's edification, we have reached out to the Municipal Finance Authority just because this is a bit of a unique situation where we do have a long-term license of occupation. It's not ownership. So we just want to be very clear that we're able to use short-term borrowing for this kind of activity. However, an initial conversation with MFA about a week or so ago seems to indicate that this should be doable, but we will be seeking that confirmation. Otherwise, we do have other options available. And the other thing I just wanted to make sure you're aware, if there are additional costs that do require some funds, such as working with KFN on heritage-related activities. We do also have $90,000 sitting in the 2023 financial plan already. That was anticipation of some of the previous grant applications, so that could be used to supplement some of those costs as well.
Any other questions, Director Green? All right, so we're voting on receipt of the report. All in favor? Carried. Then we have a recommendation. Director Arbor.
Thank you. I would just move the motion as on the board, except flipping the 150 and the 300,000. So it would now read 300,000 in Denman Hornby Island Community Works Funds and 150 in short-term borrowing. And if the committee or staff doesn't have concerns, I would add, and further that staff comes back with a user fee proposal to contribute to future maintenance and replacement of the boat ramp.
Mr. Chair. Should the $50,000 in community works also be changed to 65,000?
Oh, yes, let's do that.
And then lastly, if I could, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if further that could be considered as a separate motion. It doesn't then encumber this resolution to amend the financial plan, and it would give the instruction to staff to come back with that user fee proposal.
The actual amount is 65,680.
We'll just make sure the math is correct when we go publish the minutes there.
Correct.
I don't think it adds up to 500,000.
No, a little bit. Yeah.
I'm actually fine if the amounts stay like that. I think if it's 500 and 15,000, it gives a bit of contingency.
Second. All in favor? Carry.
And I'll move that staff come back to a user fee proposal for future maintenance of the whole ramp.
All in favor? Carry.
What does we have the community association?
Yeah, let's take a break. All righty. You all back? So moving on to item number 7, can we have somebody move on the UPCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund application?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Bruce Green, our Rural Regional Fire Chief, is here to introduce the staff report. So Bruce, over to you.
Yes, thank you, James, through the CEO to the chair and the directors. We are once again have the opportunity from the UBCM to apply for the CEPF grant. We're planning on applying for $180,000 for the 6 fire departments that are in this report. In the report attached, I have Appendix B, which is, we used this fund last year to get, I think it was close to 100, in the same ballpark of funds to update the fire departments. This year, we're applying for Hornby Island's looking at getting equipment to their SPU trailer, to update their SPU trailer. Union Bay is looking at getting training props and replacing some aging equipment and updating some of their equipment from gas to electric equipment. Merville, same thing. They're looking to update from gas to electric equipment, training, as well as extra hose and supplies. Mount Washington looking to get an electric fan as well. More SCPAs for when we get the fire hall built up there. We have, they can save the taxpayers money on buying that extra equipment, as well as training. Denman Island is looking at updating their, continue to build out their training facility. And one of the things they're looking at, bring another container in, as well as getting a forced entry prop, which is Union Bay and Oyster River looking at as well. And it should be noted that part of this grant application, what was passed by the BCOB board earlier, is Oyster River is also going to be applying for some $29,300 of funds. So the total amount that the regional district will be applying for is $208,720. With that, I open it up to any questions.
Any questions for the chief?
Go for it.
Not seeing any questions. Vote on receive report. All in favor? Carried. So anyone want to move on the recommendation? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
Number 8, comprehensive rate review for Royston, Comox Valley, Union Bay Water Local Service Area. Somebody want to receive the report? Thank you.
And Chris LaRose, Senior Manager of Water Wastewater Services, will introduce the staff report with some support from Zoe and from Lucy in finance. So Chris, over to you.
Thank you, James, and through the chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So we've prepared a presentation to help walk us through the comprehensive rate review completed for the CVRD managed water local service areas this summer and the recommended path forward. So the material presented today summarizes the more detailed information that was presented on September 26th to the workshop focused on this, the EASC and BCOB workshop focused on this area. All information presented at the workshop and today can be found in more detail in the staff reports and the attachments. So the rate review has been a long time coming and is the outcome of a large amount of planning since 2018 involving engineering and finance, big efforts from each. We're very cognizant of the significant impacts of that the increases will have on the community. And we've worked really hard to ensure the recommendations represent the best path forward for these services. It was clear when we started receiving preliminary asset management results back in 2018 that the water local service areas are behind when it comes to funding infrastructure replacement. And this was confirmed in the results of the comprehensive rate review this year. The COVID-driven delay in following up on the asset management planning back in 2019 and through the last few years was unfortunate but necessary. The community was struggling under the pandemic, and these rate increases are significant. So the decision was made not to further stress those communities with increased water rates. So unfortunately, that delay has exacerbated the issue, bringing the services closer to the end of life for the extensive water distribution systems without any boost in funding to help fund them. That being said, as you'll see in the next few slides, we still have time to make this adjustment and ensure the services are sustainable into the future. As I said, this has been a significant interdepartmental effort with significant support from finance. So we'll be sharing the task of presenting to you today. And stop us if you have any questions.
Open the mic up for questions. Sorry.
Now
Sorry,
or
Chris, I thought you said open it up for questions.
sorry, now or at any point in the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Carry on. Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
No worries. So starting off just with the objectives, as we set out into the comprehensive rate review, what we were keeping front of mind. The top of the list, as I just mentioned, was sustainable service delivery. At the moment, given the significant infrastructure liabilities faced by the service and the levels of funding, these services struggle with sustainability. So our objective here is to determine a path forward, increasing revenue so that we can be sure to meet the infrastructure replacement needs as we progress into the future and ensure delivery of essential water service. And while doing so, the second objective being to minimize the impact of these rate increases. So how can we spread out the rate increases to provide time for the community to adjust? And then thirdly, work towards optimal balance of borrowing and reserves. So there will always be a need for borrowing, even with a very mature and robust asset management program. There will continue to be peaks in asset replacement needs that are best met through a combination of borrowing and reserves. As we start our journey towards that future kind of optimal asset management program, that emphasis on borrowing is more significant, just given where we currently sit with funding and revenues. And then finally, aiming to strike a balance between impacts on current and future users. So this slide just it very briefly paints the kind of the process that has been followed over the last few years, starting with asset management. So as I mentioned, we started that journey back in 2018, and an asset management program at its heart is the asset inventory. So for each of these services, we developed detailed lists of all key assets, including information such as what year they were installed, what the materials are, what the expected lifespan of those materials, and a range of other parameters, including ones that help us assess risk, which I'll touch on in the next slide. And then around that, we developed, and with the help of external support, we developed a management plan that was brought forward in 2019 to the committee. Next, starting in 2019 with the Waterworth tool, and then put on pause for the duration of the pandemic. It picked up again early this year to develop a long-term financial plan using the Waterworth tool, which is an external third-party software purpose-built for doing exactly this for water systems. And then once that model in Waterworth was developed, then determine a financial plan or revenue requirements. That's a key output from that model required to fund the asset program. And then next, determining the cost impacts to users. So how we translate the revenue requirements to revenue through the combination of parcel tax and user rates. And then updating and engaging with the directors. So that occurred on September 26th with a workshop that was focused on this topic. And then recommended path forward, which is today. So we've incorporated, we received the feedback and supported discussion on the 26th, and have incorporated that into the recommended path forward today. And then should it be accepted today, then we move on to engaging with the public, which is planned for November, and I'll touch on that on a future slide. and then inputting the asset replacement schedule and those revenues, those increased revenues into the financial plan that will be brought forward early next year. And then amending the bylaws that are required to boost these revenues. So just a brief slide on asset management, because it is the foundation of this work. So as I mentioned, the core of this system is the asset inventory. And a key output from that is the asset replacement schedule. So the raw output is shown on the bottom left, which just shows the upcoming replacements based entirely on when the infrastructure was built and when it's projected to need to be replaced based on its kind of industry standard life expectancy. So they show up as a single cost. Say for an asbestos cement pipe has an expected lifespan of 60 years. It shows up at the 60-year mark as a single cost. I will get into a future slide how we smooth that out, because in acknowledgement of the fact that not the entire distribution system of any of these systems are not going to be replaced in that year. As we get closer and closer to that date, we'll be undertaking condition assessments, risk assessments to help us prioritize and replace pipes only when necessary, and so that the asset replacement schedule goes from being a very sharp and abrupt kind of schedule to something that's more smoothed out. And the map on the right, there's just an example from the Comox Valley Water Local Service area in the Powerhouse Road area, showing kind of the integration of this system into GIS, which allows us to, in a snapshot, take a look at our infrastructure and on the basis of risk rating, understand where those critical assets are, so we can focus our attention from a condition assessment perspective and eventually replacement on those higher priority areas. And then finally, just to note that one of the key action items coming out of the asset management planning in 2018, 2019 was that we implement a computerized maintenance management system for these water services, and that is now nearing completion. And it's been a long road. It's been a very large task to implement, but we're starting to see the major benefits in terms of work tracking, being able to draw the dots between work spent in the field on specific infrastructure, because that's yet another input into decision making for replacement. As the infrastructure ages, it becomes more of a maintenance load, and the better we can track those, the better decisions we can make about when infrastructure is replaced. And now I'll pass it over to Lucy, who will touch on a couple key policies to help inform this process.
Thank you. Through the chair and to the directors. So this was introduced to you at the workshop. So I'm just going to speak briefly about these two important policies that were drafted up as a piece of input that went into the utility rate review. So these policies being the draft asset management policy, and secondly, the water services reserve policy. So what's up on the slide is the principles associated with each. The asset management policy and the reserve policy are two of what ideally will be about 4 or 5 policies that will be under a specific umbrella for water services fiscal foundations. As we get to the future year, that staff will continue to work on that whole framework and bring forward additional policies to strengthen the framework. So as a priority, staff are in the process of implementing an asset management policy. The AM policy is intended to cover all of CVRD business, so not just specifically to water services. We have an asset management steering committee in place that has begun to take a look at this draft. We are guided by asset management best practice. And what you see here in these 8 principles here, I will say is some standardized key areas. The draft was prepared from research that is crafted around what is most recently policies that have been adopted in the policy, and it is in line with Asset Management BC. So the purpose of an asset management policy is to establish responsible governance over the practice of asset management. It is to document the CVRD's commitment to asset management and the continuous improvement of an asset management program. It defines guiding principles for the development and integration of asset management program within our organization. And finally, delineates the roles and responsibilities. So within the policy, the first principle speaks to priority-based decision-making, just establishing a method that balances off those trade-offs between things like level of service, life cycle costing, and risk. Something so that that process becomes clear and transparent. Other principles speak to CBRD's commitment to sustainable service delivery, indicates that appropriate tools, human resources are available, and then, of course, there's sufficient financial resources are in place. The asset management program supports the board's driver for climate crisis and environmental stewardship, and will endeavor to always improve by ensuring we are tracking and communicating our progress. Regarding the reserve policy, is taking the time at the onset of the utility rate review process to establish guidance to management of reserve levels was necessary. The purpose of a reserve policy is to ensure board principles are in place for the appropriate oversight and the planning of water reserves, to align for the availability of financial resources necessary to maintain viable, sustainable service that provides safe, reliable water to our homes, and that protects the water service from unforeseen events. We have 7 principles included in this draft policy. The first one we're all aware of, where reserves are established by a service. Secondly, sets parameters to be in place where the necessary financial resources are available as needed to keep operations going and to fund at responsible levels of asset renewal without having to obtain unsustainable levels of debt. Reserve balances also plan to mitigate risks for unexpected things, as we've seen in the last 5 years with COVID, for example. And this policy has a strong tie to the asset management policy as well, where it describes the obligation over assets. And as always, we must consider balance and affordability for our taxpayers as we're planning for these important funds. Principle 6 and 7 just puts down in writing the intent of the reserve types, how it can be used, and the authority over the reserves. And that's all I have for you, and I'll pass it back over to Chris and Zoe.
Thank you, Lucy. And I will pass you over to Zoe. Zoe's been has done most of the work in the rate review this summer and is best placed to give us a summary of the results.
Thank you, Chris. So the 2 key components of the rate review are the asset replacement schedule and the development of the long-term financial plan. So within the report, schedules A through C provide the details specific to each water local service area. For each is a little bit different. However, today I'll just kind of focus on, what is the asset replacement schedule and how did we develop the long-term financial model, and what that means is cost impacts to each of the water local service area. But if there are any questions on the specific details to any of these services, just feel free to interrupt and we can talk about it. So as Chris mentioned, in 2018 and 2019, we completed the asset management plan, and that's shown on the top kind of graph. So that's the asset inventory without really considering, distributing or how we're going to implement asset replacement. So as you can see up there, we have most of this is the Comox Valley Water Local Service area. It's primarily all distribution mains. They're all installed around the same time and kind of have the same service life for the same material. So we have $14 million worth of asset replacement coming up in a later year of that plan. However, we know that's not really realistic to do $14 million of work in 1 year, and not all of those assets may need to be replaced at that time. Some may need to be replaced sooner due to condition or risk, and some, might be able to go past that 60-year service life for asbestos cement pipe. So that's shown in the bottom figure. What we've done is we've taken that kind of initial asset inventory and distributed those assets on more of a curve. So for each of the service areas, a similar long-term asset replacement schedule was developed, and this was a key input into the long-term financial model. So for the long-term financial model, we used a tool called Waterworth, and they're a utility rate management software that kind of puts all of the different pieces that impact water rates and revenues into one kind of, really dynamic tool that we can use to model the scenarios and what happens. So what you can see here is a number of different colors, which includes operating costs and that asset replacement schedule.
And the long-term financial model is based on a 40-year time frame. So that's trying to kind of acknowledge that first hump of asset replacement that we need to get over with all those water mains that are kind of coming up for replacement at the same time in the 2040s. And then the other components are operating and maintenance costs, and those are shown in the two kind of darker blue colors on the figure. And for those, we've used the same operating and maintenance costs that are within the 5-year financial plan. And then for any operating and maintenance costs outside of those 5 years, we're inflating at 2.5% per year. There also is assumptions around revenue. So the model assumes we're replacing like with like, and that any upsize costs required for servicing development will be covered by development cost charges and not borne by the existing users. So for that capital asset replacement schedule, which is shown in the dark green, that's assuming a like for like replacement. And also all assets are replacement costs are inflating at 3% per year, in line with other cost escalation used for other projects we're seeing at the CBRD. The new debt is shown in the teal color on the figure, and we're assuming a 30-year amortization period, 4.4% interest rate for borrowing occurring in the first 10 years, and 3.5% thereafter. The pink color is showing where we're proposing to use debt to kind of help fund that asset replacement. And then the other two colors are the brown and the beige yellow color, and that's your parcel tax and your user rates. So for all of the water local service areas, we're using the same principles where the user rates are intended to cover it, the operating and maintenance costs for the service, and the parcel tax is intended to cover the asset replacement costs, be it, you know, the debt and the actual upfront capital. So what does this mean for each service area? For the Royston Water Local Service Area, the annual user, or the average user, sorry, consumes 248 cubic meters of water and currently pays on average $805 annually. So from the rate review, we looked at the 3 different scenarios for increasing that parcel tax over time, and the recommended path forward for Royston was increasing those rates over a longer time period, which has a more kind of overall cost impact to users, but allows rates to be increased more gradually over time, as compared to the 5-year, which is the most upfront pain, but does have a longer term kind of gain in the fact that the overall or the final rate increases can be a little bit lower. So for Royston, there's a 7% increase per year for user rates over the next 5 years to kind of get those user rates in line to cover the operation and maintenance costs. And then we have the increases to the parcel tax per the 15-year parcel tax increase schedule. The table at the bottom here just shows what the total cost of water with inflation will be for the Royston Water Local Service Area users over the next 5 years. And this does not include the capital improvement cost charge repayment for the Water South Extension project. For the Comox Valley Water Local Service Area, the average user in this service consumes 262 cubic meters of water annually and pays $545. For user rates, there's a one-time 9% increase in 2024, and then 2.5% increases thereafter, matching inflation. Again, there's the 3 options developed for the parcel tax, and the proposed path forward here is the 15-year parcel tax increase as well. And for this service, there will be an increase to the maximum requisition required to increase those parcel taxes, as we're already kind of at or over our current maximum municipal requisition for this service. And so that will require inspector of municipality approval, as shown in Chris's kind of next step slide in a few minutes here. So that shows the just cost of water over the next 5 years for the service. And finally, for Union Bay, the average Union Bay user consumes 158 cubic meters of water annually and pays $1,358. And there are some kind of modest increases to the user rates above inflation for 2024, and then in 2025, it's matching inflation. And for the Union Bay Water Local Service Area, this is the only service area where we are using or assuming some growth at 1% per year moving forward. So that does kind of help with those rate increases in later years where we can just increase the user rates at 1.5% per year matching kind of inflation, less growth. Again, for this service, in light of all the other cost pressures on it, recommending the 15-year parcel tax scenario, as that's shown for the next 5 years in the table below. So within the staff report, there are recommendations for each of these service areas per option 3, which is that user rate increases and the 15-year parcel tax rate increases. I will pass you back over to Chris for a couple final slides.
Thank you, Zoe. Yeah, so finally, from a communications perspective, so as Zoe's highlighted over the past number of slides, there are, even with the extended ramp up of user rate and parcel taxes in these service areas, there will be significant increases in the bottom line to our users over the next 5 years. So we've clearly identified the need to communicate carefully with robustly and carefully with the community. The approach summarized here is very much on the inform end of the spectrum in terms of consultation. As I've highlighted through the background and asset management work, this is an essential service. This infrastructure needs to be replaced. So there's not much in the way of flexibility here, other than what's been presented in terms of the rate of increase of revenue. So what's planned here is an information campaign, which will start with inclusion of this material, some of this material at the November 14th electoral areas meet and greet, which will be here in this room on November 14th. So there'll be a poster board or two, so that we can, and staff present to speak to them. For whoever attends that. Again, that's for all electoral areas in this room. And then we'll be sending out a direct mail to each affected property owner in each of these 3 service areas, letting them know about the rate increases, providing some background information and an invitation to attend a information session in their community. So the plan is to have a information session in each of these 3 communities. And it'll be in the last week and a half of November. The next steps. So information received at those sessions will be collated and summarized to directors. In advance of that, we are planning to bring forward, if these recommendations are supported, bring forward first, second, third reading of any required bylaws required to implement these increases to the early November board. I think the ESC, I believe it's November 6th. And then following the information sessions and equipped with the summary of feedback from the late November information sessions, we'll bring the 4th reading back to the December 12th board, which will also have that summary of feedback or kind of outcomes from the information sessions. And then for those service areas that require inspector of municipality approval, so in other words, require a maximum requisition increase, there will be that period of review in advance of the final approval. And regardless of service area, the outcome from this process will be embedded within the financial plans that will be brought forward early next year for review and approval by the committees. That's it from us, but we're happy to answer questions or support your discussion.
Director Albert.
Thanks, Chair. And yeah, thanks to staff. And it was valuable to have the workshop on this last month. It's obviously not great news whenever we see fee increases, but there's 3 things that I think we can confidently communicate to residents. Definitely when I look at Royston and Union Bay, one of which is bringing in good asset management practices and ensuring that we have that we don't have big surprises down the road in terms of capital asset replacement. Second is the state of the assets. In some instances where we have a lot of old lines and a lot of older infrastructure on the ground, I think those communities are quite aware of that. And the third one is the third one is really a recognition that it's a tough time to make those kinds of increases, but if we wait longer, it's going to get worse in terms of costs. So yeah, it's definitely a big jump. I'm really happy that we're going to take that extra step to go to the communities and inform them around our plan. And I don't think we have much of a choice to proceed. So I appreciate the staff work. It's like anything, any jump in taxes or anything like that, or rates, it comes at a hard time. Where cost of living, we're getting hit on all fronts, but at the same time, I think residents do want their assets managed properly in terms of their water assets, and this will put us on a more predictable path towards that. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Director Green.
Well, just that we had a very similar presentation at the Black Creek Oyster Bay Service Committee this morning, and we opted for the quicker route to the higher level. But either way you do it, it probably costs more at the end of the day to amortize it over 15 years and 5 years. But it has to be done, and water is our number one most precious resource. So we're doing what is good for the community. May not be popular in the community, say, but obviously nobody likes to spend more money. But you got to remember that these infrastructures were put in place at a much different time when nobody really thought too far into the future. And now we realize that the minute you bury something, you better start saving to replace it. So it is what it is, and we have to move forward. Thank you.
Not seeing any more questions or comments. Vote on receipt or report. All in favor? Carried. And we got a number of recommendations. Recommendation number 1. Can I have somebody move on to recommendation number 1? All in favor? Carried. Recommendation number 2. All in favor of recommendation number 2? Carried. Number 3. All in favor of recommendation number 3? Carried. And then number 4. Okay. All in favor of recommendation number 4? Carried. All in favor, sorry, carried. Moving to item number 9, self-services projected tax escalation.
Thank you, Chair, and Elizabeth Chark, our Chief Financial Officer. We'll move to that side of the room too. Oh, the clicker. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Lucy's going to introduce this the staff report in the PowerPoint, and somewhat of a compendium to the previous report on the water rates review, but just to provide some context and information for the directors around the South Services projected tax escalation. Lucy, over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Through the chair and to the directors, staff have prepared a report regarding the residential property tax requisitions and user rate pressures in Royston and Union Bay areas. This topic was first introduced to you at the September workshop, and I just have a short presentation here just to take us through the report on your agenda today. There are multiple CDRD initiatives currently underway, with some of the most significant having impact on specific sections of Area A. The purpose of this analysis is to create a comprehensive view of the range of initiatives planned and the potential for cumulative increases to future years. The analysis centers specifically around the communities of Royston and Union Bay, as these two communities will experience the effects of the new services. So further, when specifically considering the high impact of connection fees to the new sewer line, this will specifically affect 152 households in Royston and 311 households in Union Bay. While residents often desire more services, when significant Increases to tax requisitions, parcel tax, and utility rates are needed. Households struggle to deal with large changes. Local government budgets will need to consider the combined effect of the full range of services when considering taxpayer affordability. So staggering the delivery of new services to have gradual increases over time and providing an abundance of communication will help residents plan for changes in their own personal household budgets. The service pressures addressed in this analysis include the Sewer Extension South project. This project has been a high priority for the communities for many years now. The initiative will manage wastewater through the communities of Royston and Union Bay. And this regional system will also service Comox First Nation Treaty Settlement lands and Union Bay estates. The Water South Extension project will see water from the Comox Valley water system brought to areas of South Courtenay, Royston's, and Comox First Nation lands. As part of the Recreation Commission's strategic planning, short and medium-term goals were adopted. The short-term goals are addressed in this analysis, which includes a sports field and ice rink expansions. Enhancement of garbage collection is projected with the community potentially incorporating organic service. And lastly, the projected effects coming from the utility water rate review is incorporated as well. So just a few points on assumptions and the data used. The main source of information we've drawn from the current 2023 to 27 financial plan. The Sewer Extension South project, public information was put out at that time of the open houses. That was all based on a Class D estimate, and we've used those in the analysis. For Water South Extension, the last update was received by this table on April 17th in the report, and those figures have been incorporated. One-time costs to connect sewer are not included in here, and those are those costs that are the responsibility of the homeowner. Royston Garbage Collection Service, there was a report brought to this table in September, and that's where those estimates have been drawn from. Fire services at Union Bay, that's currently planned within the current 2023-2027 financial plan in your budget. The utility water rate review process, so just as we have gone through those recommendations that you've endorsed, you'll see those aligned in this analysis. We are addressing, for the most part, services under the responsibility of the CVRD only. And the calculations that we've brought forward are based on what we do typically, and that's that single family residential property. Okay, and we've used that 800,000 assessed value figure throughout. Okay, so hopefully what you see in your report rolled up, there's a lot of moving parts with what's been incorporated in here. And I checked all the figures yet again before we published it, but yeah, you may see something that's slightly off, and if it is slightly off, it should only be by something that's immaterial, but things are really changing as we go, and you'll see me highlight a couple of them as we go. Okay. So the table included within the executive summary of the report aims to pull key factors forward to approximate that cumulative effect. The analysis draws together both that tax and the user rates. The first table on this slide shows what is being paid in 2023. Each of the communities has common services. So first of all, we are drawing that in, and that's at 2023 rates is $833. Each of the communities then has their own unique services, and that's the second line you see there, where Royston is $257, and in Union Bay, it's $825. And one of the big reasons there's such a big difference between those two communities is fire services, which is one of the reasons why we pulled into this table the cost for Royston Fire, which actually is levied under Courtenay. Okay, so that's $170 that we've rolled into here for that particular levy. Each Royston and Union Bay has their own water services, and so those are different for each one of them. Currently, on a parcel tax perspective, Royston pays $200 and Union Bay $510. Okay, and then you see us bring in the estimate of the utility rates and what on average consumptions each of a typical household would be paying. $710 for Royston and $964 for Union Bay. In total, charges for 2023, 2,170 and 3,132. And the next table then just extrapolates out to 2027 and what would be our projections for those households as far as comprehensively paying from a tax and a user fee perspective. Common services again, and you see a shift of about $70. The unique services, Royston, not much of a change there as you go into for Union Bay. You see a larger change, and for the most part, the biggest contender in there is for the fire halls, for Union Bay. We don't really have some very good basis to extrapolate forward what Royston Fire is going to be. So for the purpose of this, we've just left it the same. Likely would expect that to go up since fire service always seem to go up. And then the next line is about their water service. So you'll see that figure change from the 200 to the 350. And that's aligned with what we have brought forward to you today from the utility rate review. And for Union Bay, that equates to $710. For the water extension south, Royston incorporated in that. The $340 you see here is the CICC payment. I have a little star beside that because what has been put out to the community is the $340 to date. However, just making a note of Friday, just received some further information that just because of where debt costs are going, that recalculations to that, you likely will see that come up somewhat higher. Okay. The results of the recreation strategy, those high conceptual estimates that were brought forward in that strategy when it came out to the public, when we did the open houses, we were estimating that there would be an additional $60 per household to pay for what was planned there. For the utility rate review, for the utility rate fees, and in line with the review, you'll see the user rates go up to $935 for Royston and $1,066 for Union Bay. And the last item in there is if the communities move to the organic program for those communities, that's an additional $100 as it's estimated right now. So in line with those pieces, you have Royston that goes from $2,170 to $3,135. Union Bay, $3,132 to $3,866. And on the last slide, I just lost my sheet on that, but that's okay. And on this particular slide, you'll see that we've now specifically shown those households that are included in that first phase of the sewer extension project. And as I was saying in the introduction, these figures are pulled from what we put out there at the open house, the Class D estimates, because there's still a long way to go in this project before you absolutely know what the cost of this projects are going to be. There was a range that we put out to $1,700 is what you see as that top end of the range for the time being. And secondly, we did do an estimate of course, as these households start to connect to the sewer line, they will also start contributing to the maintenance and the operation as well. And that current estimate is at $650. So for those households that are involved in that, then they'll see an additional $2,390. That brings them up to $5,525 for Royston, $6,256 for Union Bay. Okay.
Director Arbor. Yeah, thanks. And thanks to staff for coming back with this. I think I had asked for this piece of work about 3 years ago, and we finally have it, and it's not due to lack of attention. I think it's there's been a lot of moving parts around this, including the prior item and the water utility rates. So yeah, this is a very significant piece, but it's better to have the information for people than not, and that's why we asked for it. obviously, in a place like Union Bay, when you look at the sewage, it could literally double the taxes for people going from $3,000 to $6,000. That's not insignificant to many households. I think what it does is really start to position those communities as having comparable taxes as what you would see, for example, in the city of Courtenay. But for that, they may not see sidewalks and the rest of that. But in terms of core services, they will see comparable in relation to sewage and water. People probably starting to understand why I keep opposing the recreation facility master plan, which only adds, it's not a huge amount, but every amount counts, and I don't see a lot of benefit for Area A resident from the decisions being made to double the arenas and the pool facilities in their current location. Back on the meat of the matter, I think we need, now that this document is out, we really need to distribute it to the communities, and starting, I would say, with referring it to the South Seward Liquid Waste Management Table. So that meeting is coming up in November, and I would love to see and hear the feedback from those committee members who have been working on that project and understand the financial implications of it. But to see the overall picture of what it will do to taxes in the South should create good discussions. On my end, I have to say, since I saw those figures a couple of weeks ago, I'm really reflecting around South Seward project, and I think this board may have to come up with new ways to incentivize residents who will be in the catchment basin for the project. So staff is aware. I'm not putting any motions today, but I'm starting to contemplate whether for those core areas, whether some of the incentives we could look at, for example, would be to allow for duplexes and put new zonings that allow further densification in lots, so that people might actually see a benefit to their property in the capital value of their property in relation to what they may end up paying for services. I think that the amounts coming back with 5,000 or 6,000, we're going to need some really good proposals back to residents for them to fully agree with the value. I do believe long-term, these are really good. There will be benefits to communities, but in the short term, I think households will have a lot of questions around these proposed increases. So other than receiving the item, I would like to, after receipt, move that this document be referred to the South Seward Liquid Waste Management Table for their November meeting. Thanks, Chair.
Any other comments, questions? Director B.
Two things that are unescapable: death and taxes. It's been that way since Roman times. But I think that the community will come to realize in time that these are essential services. I think we talked about, again, at the Black Lake Oyster Bay Service Committee this morning, the fact that you can't turn the clock back. I like the idea of densification. I think that might be a good way to incentivize people. If we don't do it, I think the province is looking into it anyway, but then it would make a lot more sense when you have more user groups. It was brought out that in the Black Lake Oyster Bay system, that if we had more growth, it would cost everybody less, which pretty well flies in the face of what the community thinks. They think it's going to cost more because we have more densification. Well, it's economies of scale that we need here, because we're playing in the big boys ballpark. This is almost municipal style servicing, right? And it's unescapable. We can't continue on forever with wells and on-site septic systems back to back all the way down the street. So yeah, it sounds like a lot right now, but the way the world works, the way the inflation works, It won't be such an insurmountable sum in 8 to 10 years. It won't be quite as big as it looks now because everything else will hopefully rise in the same proportion, including maybe wages. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. Do we want to vote on receipt of the report? All in favor? Carry. Item number 10. Oh, sorry. Director Arbor.
Thanks. I'd like to move that the South Services projected tax escalation report be referred to the South Sewer Liquid Waste Management table for its November meeting.
So is that a recommendation? Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Carry.
Moved in.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Derry Monteith will be presenting the staff report. Derry is our manager of liquid waste management planning. So Derry, over to you.
Thanks, James. Through the chair. The purpose of this report is to present to the committee a proposed amendment to the 2023 to 2027 financial plan for the Liquid Waste Management Planning Service to accommodate continued development of partner agreements to support the Sewer Extension South project. So the Sewer Extension South project is being developed in cooperation with Comox First Nation and Union Bay Estates as key partners. And staff have been working closely with these partners to develop the required agreements to support the project. However, the development of these agreements is requiring more resources than originally anticipated for this year. It's estimated that an additional $40,000 will be required in 2023 for legal fees to carry on with this work. And so staff are recommending that the financial plan be amended to include this $40,000 transfer from reserves into operating for this year to cover these expenses. And with that, I welcome any questions on this report.
Any questions? Not seeing any. Vote on report. All in favor? Carry. Now we got a recommendation as well. Somebody want to move on the recommendation? All in favor of the recommendation? Carry.
Move to septic regulatory program.
Thank you. And introduce Vince Van Tongeren and Derry to present the staff report on this septic regulatory program. So Vince, I guess over to you.
Great. Thank you, James. Good afternoon, directors. This report presents an update on work towards a CVRD regulatory program for septic systems, including next steps towards implementation of a program in the electoral areas. Septic systems are regulated by the province through the sewage system regulation under the Public Health Act. This regulation places responsibility for septic system maintenance on the property owner, but does not include measures to ensure that the required maintenance is actually occurring. In 2020, a study was completed for the CVRD, identifying septic regulatory program options to consider, including mandatory pump outs, mandatory inspection and maintenance. The study also spoke to the option of a homeowner education program, which has been in place in the CVRD since 2018. Since that study was completed, interest in local government septic regulations has been expressed through local groups and initiatives, including the 2022 Norovirus Working Group and the Sewer Extension South Liquid Waste Management Plan Addendum Public and Technical Advisory Committees. Outside of the Capital Regional District, there is no other precedent for regional district septic regulations in BC. Legal guidance has been received on the considerations that would go into establishing a new regulatory program for septic systems. Matters of public health are an area of concurrent provincial and local government authority, and regional district authority in this area differs from that of municipalities. The significant difference is that municipalities have to impose requirements. To adopt a septic regulatory bylaw requiring property owners to maintain their systems in accordance with the bylaw, the CVRD would have to be granted the same authority as a municipality. This would be achieved through BC Cabinet approval of an order in council. Protection of public health is identified in the Local Government Act as a specified regulatory authority. As such, the establishment of a service for a septic regulatory program couldn't be considered as a regulatory service. Therefore, this would require an electoral approval process for service establishment. This could be by assent vote or by alternate approval process. Program cost estimates presented to date have included items such as pump outs or inspections as program costs, assuming that they would be arranged and funded through the CVRD program, with the costs then recovered through taxation. Legal advice received has indicated it's preferable to keep responsibility for septic system maintenance costs with property owners as much as possible. When considering effectiveness of a septic regulatory program, the 2020 study cautioned against using a one-size-fits-all approach, identifying the need to consider the level of risk presented by septic systems in different areas. Another consideration is that even a mandatory inspection maintenance program would not completely resolve septic-related issues in areas with high dwelling density and foreground conditions. Taking all of this into consideration, there are two regulatory program options presented in the report. Option A would see mandatory pump outs in all areas, supplemented by inspections in high-risk areas, whereas option B would see mandatory pump outs in all areas. Either of these program options could include incentives for inspections and/or upgrades. And similar to the Capital Regional District, mandatory pump outs would apply to type 1 systems, while type 2 and 3 systems would require maintenance in accordance with their maintenance plan, typically once per year. All pump outs and inspections would be arranged and funded by property owners. Keeping these expenditures as homeowner costs rather than program costs results in a lower program cost estimate than previously communicated, somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 per year. Another consideration is that either of these options, A or B, would require the order in council request. So this next slide outlines key milestones towards startup of a septic regulatory program. Should the recommendation in the report be supported, between now and next spring, public engagement materials, including further details on program costs and potential tax impacts, would be developed in preparation for outreach in the spring. When considering the timelines for the order in council request, additional public consultation in support of an electoral approval process and subsequent service establishment logistics, service startup would be in 2026. And this brings us to the recommendation in the report that staff be directed to undertake next steps in septic regulatory program development, including public consultation in support of an order in council request to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. And further, that public consultation be based on septic regulatory program option A, as described in the staff report dated October 11th, 2023. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Director Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the CAO to staff. If you ask the guys with the septic pump trucks, they know darn well where the problem areas are because they go there all the time. So I do think that that having 5-year inspections, whether or not it's just a high risk area or we blanket the whole valley with it, the high risk areas would be the most important, good place to start. But I don't think you would really have to get another professional to do the inspections because, well, I guess you could if it was failing, but the whistleblower could be obviously the contractor himself. In conversation with the guy that came around, he was letting me know, where the real problem areas are. Now, maintenance of the high pressure systems, they're part of the program, aren't they? because you buy the system and you have to get the filters replaced and whatever so often anyway. So they're already in essence being serviced, are they not?
If the property owner is maintaining them in accordance with the maintenance plan that's been filed as part of the filing with Island Health, then yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So and incentivizing, are we looking at I guess there's no program with the province like there is with wood stoves or something like that, but you know, we have low flush toilets, say, you know, that we can get rebates on and stuff like that. But what about something along the lines of if you swap out your system, you get some kind of help. There's no provincial support for that, so we'd be on our own, wouldn't we? But something to sweeten the pot. Oh, I didn't mean to say that. You know what I mean? It could, you know, I think people on for the most part want to do the right thing, and you know, obviously when your system's failing and everything's bubbling up in your bathtub, you know there's a problem. So I don't know. It's a pity the province doesn't come up with something. Are we the only electoral area that's looking into this? I mean, we mentioned the fact that Capital Region has it already, but what about all the other jurisdictions in the interior and whatever? Is there anything akin to this out there?
I've asked that question to one of the representatives we speak to this about with the Ministry of Health, and not to the same degree that we are. I would say there hasn't been this level of interest expressed in other regional districts. There have been, like, other regional districts have education programs in place.
Yeah.
Like Columbia Shuswap, for instance, has an education program, and they did do some property owner surveys in support of that. And I know, a handful of years ago, the regional district of Nanaimo considered septic regulations, but that might be going back almost 10 years. So.
Thank you.
Right, Trevor. Yeah, thanks. And I'm definitely in favor of sending that for some form of public engagement and consultation. I think it's been a long time coming, this report, in terms of potentially proceeding. I would note that in Area A, there's two main reasons, I think, why there's a public recognition that improvement to the septic system regulation is needed. One is there's still many residents that pull their water from wells at the same place that they have septic, and those are identified in high-risk areas. I can think of many neighborhoods on Hornby and Denman, but elsewhere as well. And second, we have a societal commitment to protect Bain Sound and the shellfish in there. We generate 50% of the oyster production in the province. We've had multiple norovirus outbreaks over the years. And yes, people are concerned around so many issues, and I think it's a bit of give and take. The federal government just introduced regulation, for example, for the producers to tag their equipment now on shellfish farms, and so I think it's a matter of everyone doing the right thing. And for landowners, that means improving our practices around septic. So I'd be curious to see if that's reflected in the public consultation, that care that people have, and I'll look forward to a future report. Thanks.
Direct agree.
Believe it or not, I actually have a thought. If you talk about incentivizing, what's the rough cost of having your tank pumped? It's around $300, I think, isn't it? Rough and ready, if I remember correctly, last time I did it.
Yeah, it depends on location.
So
a few years ago, we had a workshop on Hornby Island, and I think it was around $600 was the range there. But obviously,
if you're on the islands, that's different because you got to haul it off, right? Yeah. But maybe it should be something whereby we pay every 5 years. We can pay for half And that would give the opportunity for the operator to, you know, basically assess, not at an engineering level, but basically assess if the system's healthy. You could tell if it definitely was failing. But something like that, I mean, where would you draw the money from though? You know, we don't have a service again. And to establish a service, we'd have to go through the public assent process, which we haven't had the best of luck with, as a matter of fact. So, but there's an idea if we had some kind of, you know, meet you halfway kind of thing where everybody gets their first pump out for free every 5 years, or maybe just once, you know, and you know, just to turn the minds towards it. And of course, the other thing too is not everybody's a homeowner. So you don't have a lot of incentive there if you're just renting a place, right? It's not gonna, but just a thought. I mean, I don't know where the funds would come from because we don't have a service, but something to get the ball rolling.
Any other comments, questions? Not seeing any. Want to vote on report? Vote in favor? Carried. Then there's recommendation. All in favor of the recommendation? Looks like we're all in favor. Carried.
Just one more question. Question staff, just if I have the opportunity, if you grant me the leverage here and leeway. We do have a liquid waste management service, but it's nothing to do with liquid waste management, right? Can we not change the term of reference on it to make it so that we could use that money from that? Because it's quite a big service. A lot of money goes in there. And people always ask, well, why am I paying this line item on my taxes when we don't have liquid waste? You know, I'll probably explain what's for this, that, and the other thing, but you know, is there a possibility, this might be more for James, I guess, you know, legislatively to utilize that service and expand it.
So the liquid waste management planning service is very much a management planning service. It is about doing the research, understanding the conditions that would need to be in place to consider then establishing a new service or amending other services to perhaps purchase equipment or put in regulatory measures. The LWMP service is that planning vehicle to be able to determine what is the right decision for the regional district to move forward on either regulatory or infrastructure based service. And I think Derry or Vince, you guys have had this question before around what LWMP service function 340 does and doesn't do. I don't know if you want to expand on that at all. But the LWMP service that we are talking about, this analysis happening under right now is very much that planning service.
That is where it's coming from.
Yeah, and
so much like the homeless shelter service, it could be amended to a degree.
I'd have to look into the mechanics of the amendment to that particular service. I think it might fall into one of these regulatory services, or we'd have to look into the mechanics of the service establishment itself. What we are looking at here is to take the findings that we've been able to pull together so far and look to what would a function have to look like to be able to do septic regulation. And I think that's what the recommendation here is to further that work.
Yeah, because if you're going to fund half of a pump out every 5 years, that is going to amount to like $30 a year tax requisition.
I think the report does talk a little bit about the roles the regional district would want to play in terms of taking on risk and responsibility. And so I think that has been explored to a degree. I think the direction that staff are recommending is that we now go through some of the steps to engage with the public and flesh out what a program would look like.
Okay, well, it's a thought, plan B or something like that, I guess. Because if something's existing, like I say, we're going to go to the public, you know, I mean, people seldom support things, even though they're, in the end of the day, they're very beneficial. i.e. the rural unified garbage and recycling collection program. You know, I mean, people got to save so much money doing that, but just a thought.
I can speak a little bit more to the function 340. Yeah, as James referenced, it's quite specific in its purpose, research and analysis, and because of its specific purpose, it was established through director consent. And if we were looking to change the scope of the service, then the legal guidance we've indicated suggests that we would probably have to do some sort of assent process in order to expand the scope of the service to consider regulatory type actions such as what's was proposed in the report.
Still be a fact finding.
Yeah.
Not seeing any other questions or comments. Do we want to vote on receive a report? Oh, sorry, we're already past that. So we've received.
Yes, so we're on to 11, 12.
Number 12. Pardon me, I missed a step there. $1 billion.
Okay.
Whoa. James?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Kevin Duville is able to introduce the staff report. Kevin?
Thank you very much. Through the acting CAO and the chair to the directors. Just have a brief overview of this report. I know it's been a long day and we still have an in-camera agenda to tackle. So this is our kind of regular status report update on the community works funds. And as I'm sure all the directors are aware, we're coming down to the wire with the current contract, which expires at the end of March 31st. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to provide you a sense of where we are currently at with the existing community work funds. We've also taken the opportunity to provide you a bit of a history looking back at the various projects that have been funded through these allocations over the past 10 years. So in Appendix B and C, we've provided two different kind of views of that, kind of one on a project basis, and then certainly one based on each electoral area and those individual things that you've funded. And in cases where you've funded things in other areas, we've kind of given you an assessment of that. There is also a recommendation included within this report, and I'll be speaking to that for a moment. So at the end of the day, what we're asking is for the committee to decommit some funds as outlined in the table on page 1 of the report. And I can speak to each of those very briefly. So with respect to the Dyke Road improvements, as it's noted there, we did receive a sizable capital grant through UBCM. So we're looking at reducing that amount from the current roughly $360,000 that's identified in Appendix A down, reducing that by $200,000. With respect to Lazo Road Greenway, same thing. We received a federal active transportation grant of about $1.3 million. Therefore, we're looking to reduce that slightly from the existing $494,000 that's continued to be committed, reducing that by $97,000. And then with respect to the community connections for electoral area B, that stems back from a motion by this committee back in February 2020. And the intent at that time was to allocate $150,000 in 2022 and then also in 2024 for projects that weren't specified at that time. In meeting with the manager of parks, we determined that those funds were no longer required to be allocated, which is why we're asking for those funds to be decommitted and put back into the community work fund pool. And then the last 3 items are just to clean up projects that have been completed, and those remnant funds are no longer necessary. So if the committee were to go ahead and approve those recommendations, then on the top of page 2 of the staff report, we've provided a sense of what funds would now be remaining within the community works funds, funds that we currently have. So at this point, we have about $386,676 available. If we decommit the funds that we've identified, that would free up about $605,000, which would then leave us about $992 to play with. Of course, that doesn't include any additional items that may come forward with respect to some of the active transportation that we spoke about earlier in the meeting today. We also are planning to bring back a secondary report for your information, likely in December, once we're further along in the financial planning process, to give you a sense of what has started to be layered within the 2024-2028 financial plan, just so you have a heads up before we go into budget deliberations. And we're hoping at that time to bring you back any additional information we may have at that point with respect to the engagement with UBCM and with respect to the new contract, kind of post that March 31st, 2024 timeframe. So that's all we really have, but certainly, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Registry. What happened to all my money? There was millions in there. So when this comes up with the feds, is there any inclination of where they're going to go on it? I know UBCM is very, very powerful and they aren't going to let it slip by. So what's your feeling? Is there any indication of whether it's going to continue?
The chair to Director Grieve. We have had one kind of Zoom call several months ago with UBCM, and at that time it was looking very favorable that there will be some kind of extension. We just don't know what the specific details of that extension are yet. But definitely there are discussions going on with senior government to ensure there is some kind of stable program going forward. And I know they are also looking at the existing eligible project criteria, and there is a possibility that that could be expanded to include other areas. We just don't have any additional information at this point. But we have been told by UBCM that there will be some consultation with local government occurring this fall. We just don't have any dates confirmed as of yet.
Thank you.
Not seeing any other comments or questions or voting and receive a report. Director Gates?
No, I was just raising my hand and seeing.
Okay, all in favor of receive the report? James?
Mr. Chair, the agenda cover pages don't actually include a recommendation for the staff report, but in the report itself, there is this resolution recommendation that's on the screen around decommitting the funds as noted. So staff would request you to consider this as a resolution coming out of today's meeting.
Director Grieve, any comments, thoughts?
Well, the Morrison Creek Conservation Area Bridge. Some of them refresh my mind. I don't remember that one. Is that up at Max Quad, up in that area?
Do you have a history on this particular?
Is that up on Lake Trail?
Yeah, I don't have a specific history on this project. Unfortunately, nobody from Parks is here to respond.
Yeah.
Oh, Doug DeMarzo is actually on the line. Doug, can you share some perspective on this one?
Yes, that's correct. That was the upgrade to the bridge across the Morrison Creek on the Clocksmont property. There was an old bridge in there for vehicle traffic, which was up or downgraded, depending on which way you look on it, for horses and pedestrians to continue to use that existing trail.
In lieu of the old flat deck rail car, you mean?
Yeah, that's correct.
I don't remember this coming forward. Sorry. Do we get a vote on supporting that?
The work's been completed and you voted on supporting it a number of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I can't recall exactly when it came forward to the electoral areas.
Yes, through the chair. I could support that, Doug. It looks like the motion was made back in 2019.
2019, okay. Okay, well, it's a done deal. Thanks.
If I could, I'd like to maybe defer to the next Electoral Area Resource Committee meeting with regards to the recommendation. Just like to absorb it a little bit more. That's my suggestion, Director.
Okay, I'll second that. Yeah.
All in favor? That's what we do.
We do have a form, but not.
All in favor then? Karen, thanks. Turned in camera. We need a motion to adjourn to go on camera? Okay. Yeah, all in favor? Carried.